right, good morning. So we have a completely unscheduled live stream today, this morning. And the reason is we have a committee hearing from the oversight, and they're looking to talk about the bill that just came out for, especially for the first pension benefits that are going to be amended. That's this one coming up. And as always, they're always late on the meeting, but I'm going to have this pulled up. But before this starts, we have a couple of breaking news. So the first one is they just published a amendment to the committee print that they had released. So if you watch my video on Monday about the federal employee pension that is going to be changed beginning upon enactment, they added a amendment to it, and I'm going to pull this up shortly here, and I want to make sure this is all correct. Let me go ahead and change this up. Full screen, share, and what I want to do is I want to share the full screen. Let me see. It's window. This should be it. Okay. So if you're wondering how to keep track of what's going on with the bill, because we got not just the judiciary and the oversight committee about the federal employee pension, but there's also the Ways and Means Committee. So this one is going to be huge too, because this is all about the taxes that I've been talking about on my channel with Social Security, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. That's all going to be reported on May 12th or 13th. So it's kind of held up right now because there are some disagreements within the Republican Party on what to propose, what to go into the bill. So that's something that they are paying attention to. And this was supposed to be released by this week, but it got delayed for another 2 weeks. And you can always read what's inside, like judiciary, armed services, homeland security. So all you have to do is just type in a Google search. Let's see, CRFP. So that's the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. And just type in a Google search for 2025 Reconciliation Tracker, and this is going to pop up. And it doesn't give you like a notice, right? Give you like here's what you need to do, or give you like a notification or app or anything like that. I just check this probably 3 times a day, 4 times a day, because that's kind of my job, right? But when you go down here where it says Oversight and Government Reform, so if you look at it here, it says -50 billion, which means that they're looking to save $50 billion over the next 10 fiscal years. And based on the markup that they publish, they're looking to save about 51.6 billion. So they do track this. And then there's the markup schedule, and there's the markup page, bill text, and bill summary. Okay. So for today's committee meeting, and they called us about last week on April 25th. So this is a business meeting within the committee for fiscal year 2025, and they're going to talk about the resolution 264 and then resolution 286. So they added a few more additional documents that the House of Representatives, I'll just read this real quick. So inquiry requesting the president transmit certain documents in this possession to the House of Representatives relating to the security clearance held by Elon Musk, members of the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency Service, and any other individual considered to be a member of the DOGE team. They're also requesting to transmit certain documents relating to the dangerous, unaccountable use of AI by the U.S. DOGE service to jeopardize the private information and essential services of the American people. And the last one is of inquiry, requesting the president to transmit certain documents relating to the use of insecure electronic communication platforms, including Signal for official communications, and to the compliance of the administration with all federal records laws. Okay, so it's just a summary of what they're going to go over and the proposals. The committee print would achieve 30.716 billion in revenue increases by raising the first retirement contribution rate for certain existing federal civilian employees and postal employees up to a new rate of 4.4% of their salary. And it would they're looking to save about 10.113 billion by eliminating the additional retirement annuity payment for federal retirees that are eligible to retire before age 62, which they currently receive until they reach the age of Social Security retirement eligibility. Let's see, let me go ahead and summarize this real quick. And then they would save 4.75 billion by reducing federal pension benefit spending by basing a retiree's annuity payment on their average high 5 earnings years, as opposed to the high 3 salary, right? I talked about that on Monday's video. And then the rest of them are more about the MSPB filing system. They want to start charging federal employees fees. Let me switch. And it looks like the meeting has started. So let me go ahead and switch that real quick.
Question of approving any measure or matter, adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered. The committee will continue to use electronic system for recorded votes on amendments and passage of the bills before the committee. Of course, should any technical issues arrive, which I do not anticipate, we will immediately transition to traditional roll call votes.
Let me know if you guys can hear
Any
audio,
procedural or
Just give me a
motion-related
thumbs up in the
votes
comment
during
section
today's
or in the
markup will
live
be
chat.
dispensed with by a traditional roll call vote. Before we begin, I'd like to let our departing ranking member, Jerry Conley, know that everyone here is praying for him. Our thoughts are with him and his family. It's been a pleasure to work with Jerry Conley. We don't always agree, but I will tell you, I think he is a.
And just real quick, Jerry Connolly, he is the ranking Democratic member in that committee. He's been pretty much opposing the bills and everything, but he apparently his cancer just recently came back, so he is stepping down as the ranking Democratic member in that committee. And and Comer, who's speaking right now, he is the chairman of the committee from the Republican side.
He tries to do what he thinks is best, and we all on the Republican side of the aisle appreciate and respect Ranking Member Conley and wish him a speedy recovery.
Mr. Chairman, over here.
Yes.
Would it be all right if I led us in a word of prayer, Jerry?
Yes, please. Well, I'll yield to Mr. Burchett for a word of prayer for Mr. Conley.
Bow our heads, please. Dear Lord, we ask blessings on our.
So real quick, while they're going through the introduction here, right now they are going to discuss the bill that is that's already been written. So the one thing I did not get to was the amendment they just published yesterday morning, and they added January 1st, 2027 for enactment for the high 5 salary instead of this year. So that's something that I do want to listen out for.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burchett, thank you for your prayers. I want to thank all the members, both sides of the aisle, for your kindness and remembrance and prayers on behalf of Jerry Conley. Jerry Conley is still involved here, though. So he is whispering in my ear. He is, while I am in an interim position in his absence, he is very much engaged on the reconciliation process and thereafter. His presence is still here, and I think he would have fully endorsed the part of Mr. Burchett's prayer that called upon God to give wisdom to Republicans. Ironically, we are here today on a hearing on federal employees. Mr. Conley has more federal employees in his district than any other member of Congress. So I know it pains him greatly not to be part of this process. But I hope that his presence and his love and his longtime advocacy on behalf of federal employees has an impact on this hearing and on the votes that we will take during the course of this day. Jerry Conley was not only an advocate for federal employees, he was someone who nurtured federal employees. You can see that in his own staff. He has many staff members that the committee staff included that came from various parts of government that Jerry had worked with over 20 years. Jerry, as the chairman said, Jerry was legitimate and is a legitimate legislator in every aspect of that word. I've been working with Jerry Conley for almost 25 years. Jerry and I have done codels to Iraq, and countless codels to Iraq, Afghanistan. We've done investigations on the Army Hospital, Walter Reed Hospital, back in the day when we were fearful that they were not providing adequate care to our wounded military and veterans. He has been a real example, hopefully to both sides of the aisle. And I just ask that his presence and his priorities and his spirit, imbue all of us during this process. And again, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and especially Mr. Burchett for his kind prayers on my friend's behalf. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Our next item for consideration is the Oversight Committee's fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Continuing Resolution 14. The clerk will please designate the committee print.
Oversight Committee Fiscal Year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14.
Without objection, the committee print shall be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please designate the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to the committee print offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for a statement on the committee print and the amendment.
Okay, this is the amendment that he's going to talk
Today,
about.
this committee has a generational opportunity to fulfill its part of the House mandated charge to enact reforms to benefit the American people. This work is part of a larger effort led by President Trump to fundamentally change how the federal government operates. Last November, Democrats offered to provide, quote, more of the same, but the American people rejected that and elected President Trump to a historic second term. President Trump promised to change Washington, D.C., and he has delivered on that promise during his first 100 days in office. House Republicans' budget takes action to further deliver on President Trump's America First agenda. It provides the resources needed to secure our border, enforce our immigration laws, and deport criminal illegal aliens. It grows our economy by reducing taxes for American families and small businesses. It encourages investment in the United States to create good paying jobs right here in the United States. It restores America's energy dominance by dismantling the radical left's Green New Deal scam and empowering American energy producers. Republicans' budget restores peace through strength to provide our military with the resources it needs to protect our freedom. And our budget will make the government more efficient and more accountable. Today, we are considering reforms within the Oversight Committee's jurisdiction that reduce federal deficits by at least $50 billion in 10 years. The cost reduction changes to the federal government the committee will consider are part of the president's vision for enacting his legislative agenda and pass significant taxpayer savings into law. Congressional procedure, precedent, and tradition too often contribute to an ever-expanding federal government while reconciliation process, while imposing requirements and some limitations on cost-saving measures this committee is considering, provides a rare opportunity to reverse that trajectory. The Oversight and Government Reform Committee has very limited jurisdiction to help reduce the federal budget deficit. Specifically, the Oversight Committee is empowered to pursue civil service reforms, including federal employee benefits and reining in the influence of partisan and unaccountable government employee unions. Such federal employee retirement benefits far outpace the retirement benefits that most Americans enjoy in the private sector. The Congressional Budget Office issued an April 2024 report indicating that, and I quote, benefits for federal workers cost 43% more per hour worked on average than benefits for private sector workers, $43 an hour more. Furthermore, the CBO notes that, quote, benefits are also constituted a larger share of total compensation for federal workers, 40%, than for workers in the private sector, which was 30%, end quote. World-class employment benefits provided to federal employees are well known, which can include 11 paid holidays, various incentives and awards, health, life, and long-term care insurance, flexible spending accounts, student loan repayment, and forgiveness plans, generous leave and workplace flexibilities, and child care, professional development, and commuter subsidies. The simple truth is that a significant amount of the costs associated with all of these benefits are funded by hardworking taxpayers in the private sector and increasingly now federal government borrowing. The legislation before us today advances important budgetary reforms that will save taxpayers money. The proposed reforms also account for some unique employee situations brought to this committee's attention. And we have therefore made some changes to avoid unintended consequences contrary to clear public interest. This includes key exemptions to maintain public services provided by certain frontline federal employee groups, such as law enforcement officers, border patrol officers, air traffic controllers, nuclear material couriers, and firefighters who typically have shortened federal careers due to mandatory retirement rules. Taken together, these reforms will reduce the deficit by $50.9 billion while moving us toward the more accountable federal government the American people demand and deserve. I now recognize my colleague, Mr. Lynch, for his opening statement.
Okay. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Lynch is
The real reason we're here today is because congressional
temporary
Republicans have
ranking member from
instructed
the
this
Democratic
committee
Party
to
and the
target our
committee.
federal workforce with approximately $50 billion in funding cuts, regardless of the impact on hardworking, loyal federal employees and their critical services that they provide to the American people. In just 100 days, we've witnessed this administration lay off more than 200,000 probationary employees. And we talk about generational change. We just fired the next generation of federal workers. Leading public health experts, veterans, and other critical positions. We've coerced, well, the Trump administration has coerced 75,000 civil servants to resign. They replaced 50,000 nonpartisan civil servants with political appointees and illegally terminate nonpartisan independent oversight by federal watchdogs, our inspectors general. This partisan bill threatens to further undermine the federal workforce by reducing the take-home pay, the benefits, and workforce protections of 2.4 million federal employees, most of whom are middle-class Americans, and a third of whom are military veterans. Americans did not vote for Donald Trump to do that. They did not vote to have Donald Trump cut 80,000 employees at the VA who are taking care of our veterans. This is more of the same, an unprecedented assault on a political purge of the civil service. If this legislation becomes law, almost every federal employee hired in 2013 or earlier under the Federal Employee Retirement System, or FERS, would see a nearly 4% pay cut by forcing them to contribute more to retirement. The Federal Employee Retirement System Annuity Supplement, the monthly payment for retirees before they are eligible for Social Security at age 62, would be eliminated for anyone not actively receiving the supplemental payment at the time this bill is enacted or does not meet specific exemptions. Federal workers like letter carriers, VA hospital nurses, and food inspectors who've committed decades to the job and are eligible to retire would not be able to receive this vital payment to make ends meet. This legislation would also change the annuity formula to base most employees' annual retirement payments on their highest 5 years of earnings instead of the highest 3, an outright theft of earned benefits that would cost each federal employee thousands of dollars per year. A particularly egregious provision in the bill would force any newly hired federal employee to accept at-will employment with no protections or face an additional 5% retirement contribution on top of the 4.4% already required. So firefighters, Capitol Police officers, air traffic controllers, and other federal workers who choose to remain under the merit-based system with employment protections would be forced to contribute nearly 10% of their paycheck towards retirement. At the same time that we're actually reducing the amount of that retirement. This legislation would also require current and former federal employees to pay a $350 filing fee for any appeal before the Merit System Protection Board. So in order to exercise your rights as an employee under this system, under the Merit Protection Board, employees would have to pay $350 to have their rights protected, which would create a financial barrier for employees seeking justice, particularly for low-income or recently separated workers. Despite the claims of this administration, federal workers are not leeches on the system, but they are hardworking, dedicated public servants who are paid about 25% less than their private sector counterparts. A strong, nonpartisan federal workforce is fundamental to the functioning of a democratic government. These dedicated workers deserve our respect and so much more. Like most Americans, federal workers face increased costs for groceries and housing. And economic uncertainty because of President Trump's reckless tax and tariff agenda is undermining their economic position. The Trump tariffs are estimated to cost American households close to $5,000 per year. That would be the largest tax increase since 1968, and that is coming. That is coming. Republicans are also advocating for a tax regime that will actually increase the federal deficit by more than $4 trillion. You talk about borrowing? In order to fund the Republican tax cut, they're borrowing. They're borrowing $4 trillion to give a tax cut to some of the richest Americans. There's no fiscal responsibility in that. Worst of all, they're seeking to offset these costs by gutting $800 billion from Medicaid programs. My Democratic colleagues and I do not support that, nor do the American people. Oversight Democrats stand with struggling families. We oppose corruption and abuse of power, and we are committed to solving our nation's crises without sacrificing the well-being of our country's civil servants. In closing, I urge all of my colleagues to reject this legislation and instead work towards a budget that respects American workers and the vital services that they provide. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Gentleman, yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes Ms. Norton.
I strongly oppose this reconciliation bill, including the committee's portion. Republicans are taking away Medicaid, food assistance, pay, benefits, and protections for federal employees and other critical federal funding, and programs to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. The Trump administration and Congress have launched unprecedented attacks on federal employees, federal contract workers, federal agencies, federal programs, the rule of law, and the Constitution, among other things. Most recently, the administration stripped federal employees of their collective bargaining rights. The administration and Republicans in Congress are trying to dismantle much of the federal government, gut the federal workforce, and fill federal jobs with political loyalists in violation of the Constitution, statutes, and regulations. Federal employees who provide invaluable services to the American people deserve praise, not derision, cruelty, fear, chaos, and illegal firings. These actions would and have deprived the federal government of expertise and experience. This harms the services of the federal government that the federal government provides to all Americans. Instead of attacking federal employees, this committee should be considering bills to support the federal workforce, such as my bill to combat federal pay compression. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Turner from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly support President Trump's efforts and voted for the fiscal year 2025 budget reconciliation effort in the House. I will be opposing this committee's bill today. I gave this committee a prior heads up prior to this markup of my opposition to this bill and sought changes to this bill. I do not believe that this bill represents Republican values, and I don't believe that it represents American values. I believe that making changes to pension retirement benefits in the middle of someone's employment is wrong. Changing the rules, especially when someone has already been vested in their benefits, is wrong. Employee benefits are not a gift. They are earned. When someone goes to work every day, what they believe that they're earning includes the benefits, both that they earn in their wages, but also the benefits that they are told that they are receiving.
And this gentleman
I
is
have
from the
fought
Republican
to try
Party
to get the
in
Delphi
Ohio.
style retirees pension benefits restored that were taken away from them during the Obama administration. And I'm not going to fight to have one group's pension benefits restored and then vote to take away another group's pension benefits. Now, I understand the need for reform, and certainly we can have changes that occur in benefits for new hires. We can certainly look prospectively, but I do think that for current employees to change the rules for people in the middle of the game is wrong. I have talked to enough people on the House floor that I do think that this will not be included in the final bill, and that this bill ultimately will have to be changed if it's going to be included in the ultimate budget reconciliation. So I will be voting no, and I certainly hope that that this process, as it goes through, will be changed, because I do not think that it is fair and it represents either Republican values or American values. I think that we as a party stand up for pensions, and I don't think that we should say to the American public that we will change someone's pension in the middle of the process of their employment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes okay, Ms. Crockett, then Ms. Luna's next.
I actually just wanted to say that I agree. Something that I very rarely have an opportunity to do on this committee. And I actually want to applaud the Congressman Turner, for laying this out in a very plain way that is not about partisanship, that is simply about right versus wrong. And I think as we go through reconciliation as a whole, we should be looking at what is right, and it should not be about what somebody told us we had to do. It should be about listening to our constituents and doing what is fair and just. I think that that is who we are supposed to be in the House. We are supposed to look after the people that elected us and just do right by Americans. So honestly, because I very rarely get an opportunity to agree with someone from across the aisle in this committee, I just wanted to say that I absolutely agree. And it's not just agreeing, I agree for the same reasons. A lot of times when you see no votes on the floor, sometimes it's for completely different reasons. But this is about fairness and about doing what's right for people. And I think that we all on this committee should take a step back. And as we go through this budget process, we should absolutely think about what is right to do for the people. So thank you so much, Congressman Turner, for eloquently laying this out, and I will yield.
J-
The gentlelady yield to Mr. Would the gentlelady yield to Mr. Garcia?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make some opening comments as well. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I also just want to start today, and I want to thank both our ranking member, our interim ranking member, and our chairman for the remarks on our ranking member, Jerry Connolly. I also just want to add and send love and appreciation to ranking member Connolly. He's a mentor, I think, to all on this committee, and I know we all wish him a strong recovery and are sending his family a lot of love. Ranking member Connolly, of course, cares about how government works and has been one of the most effective lawmakers in supporting our federal workers here in Congress. And I just want to wish him and his family the absolute best. Now, I also want to start out today by laying out what's happening here today. It's clear that the majority on this committee, most of them, are part of a massive effort to rig the economy against the American people. And I want to spell this out as clearly as we can. Here's the actual deal the majority is offering. $7 trillion in deficit-based finance tax cuts for the wealthiest in this country, huge giveaways to Elon Musk and his friends. And then
I'm just going to pause the audio for a second just to give you guys a update on what I'm going to go over. So we're listening to the committee hearing right now. So this is the oversight committee that basically is in charge of the federal employee pensions, your pay raises, your COLA base. This is all coming from this committee. So they're having a debate and hearing about what they think, what they believe. And one of them that was surprising was actually Michael Turner from Ohio, from the Republican side. He says that changing the game in the middle of the employment for the guys who have been working for 20, 30 years is unfair. So that from the Republican side there is some oppositions there. After this hearing is over, I'm going to go over the amendment. That is amendment that came out for the video that I did on Monday about the federal employee pension changes. They did add a date for 2027 for the high five average salary. So January 1st, 2027, that is a proposal, okay? And that is an amendment from Representative Comer, who is the chairman of this committee. So let me go and unmute and go ahead and continue with this.
you can't also keep talent if you don't pay people what they're worth. This committee needs to stop supporting the DOGE agenda and the Trump agenda. We need to say no to Elon Musk and Trump's attempts to sabotage the programs and agencies that people rely on. This committee should be investigating powerful people, not enabling them. We should take on and stop the Trump agenda, not further it. We should be investigating the impact of tariffs. We should hold hearings on reducing the cost of living and issues that matter to all Americans. And we should stand up for the rule of law. We should be investigating the people who are profiting off our government, jeopardizing our national security, and harming our country. And we need to stand up for working people, inside or outside our government. We should defeat this bill and create a government that actually helps people. Thank you. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize to speak on the ANS, Ms. Luna from Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'm extremely proud to have this reconciliation package being marked up today. And I'd like to say that the language placed in section 90004 of this package specifically is a provision that I contributed to in the reconciliation package. And it's not about ideology. It's about the budgetary responsibility of protecting American taxpayers from spiraling entitlement costs tied to the federal workforce. So first and foremost, for those of you who have maybe ever served, there was a point in time when the military had the option of, and new incoming troops had the option of actually adopting the new retirement program. So instead of just being 20 years automatic retirement, it shifted to something like a 401k. What this provision specifically allows is for new hires to either opt into a traditional FERS protections where they have the option of increasing their personal contribution by 5%, or if they choose not to, having access to more cost-efficient personal track. That's important because a lot of people are saying that this is somehow going to impact the current retirement system, and that's simply not the case. This structure is going to incentivize and create actuary beneficial dynamic changes for the Treasury, allowing the CBO to reduce the deficit by over $4.5 billion over the next decade. So I understand everyone here is representing their districts, their constituents. And what I can tell you is, first and foremost, it's really important that the facts and the evidence is out there. We are not trying to attack people's retirements. In fact, we're doing quite the opposite. And if you have a runaway train of debt, ultimately understand that that can impact everything from Social Security to these retirement packages. So we have to be fiscally responsible. Thank you, Chairman. And I will also say this. Unfortunately, right now, because of the amount of, I think, partisanship in regard to this topic, I think a lot of people are genuinely scared about DOGE. And the fact is that DOGE is actually doing right by all of the American people by ensuring that future programs, future generations are not left on the fiscal hook of debt, but also to have the opportunity and access to the American dream. So I understand what everyone's here is trying to do in regards to their constituencies, but it's very important that we have those facts out there. So thank you, Chairman. I yield this time, and I urge all of my colleagues not just to support this amendment, but also to support this reconciliation package.
Thank you. And does any other member wish to speak on the A&S, Ms. Randall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, as I have said in this committee before, I have the honor of representing 27,000 federal workers who continue to tell me daily and weekly how traumatizing it is to be disparaged by this administration and congressional Republicans who continue to say that they are looking for waste and fraud and abuse and people who are not doing their jobs. Certainly in every workforce, there are folks who rise above and go above and beyond, and there are folks who don't. But the individuals who are serving our country, the Department of Defense at Naval Base Kitsap, at the Intermediate Maintenance Facility at Puget Sound, Naval Shipyard, are doing an essential service to protect our mission and our national security. We also have, like everyone else, postal workers, and we have Forest Service, and we have folks who want to deliver results for the American people, but are feeling attacked regularly. And this bill continues those attacks. This committee is proposing to cut retirement benefits and pay for our federal employees so that folks like Elon Musk can have higher tax cuts. And, you know, regarding Section 90004 and, you know, the assertion that is giving individuals options for their retirement, what it does is use the carrot of not lowering your take-home pay to convince employees to go at will and to lose the benefits that they have to challenge workforce discriminations and decisions that they would otherwise be protected from, or at least have options to pursue corrections. You know, they're shifting folks from a regular employee to an at-will employee in this change of retirement benefits. And I think we can't let that be swept under the rug. You know, the stories that I hear from my neighbors, like a federal Head Start employee for 23 years who got fired, she deserves the ability to pursue an appeal, to pursue being reinstated in her job when we know we have a child care crisis. Another of my neighbors in Shelton, a disabled veteran and the spouse of an active duty Air Force service member, lost her job with USDA. And the spouse told me, we are real people who are suffering, and we just want things to go back to normal. And they're asking me to do everything I can to reverse what she calls a betrayal. I met with Forest Service workers yesterday. We're already having a hard time recruiting folks in to the Forest Service to be able to do the important thinning and maintenance of federal lands to prevent wildfires. And they have mandatory retirement early because of the dangers of their job as firefighters, but without these supplemental annuity payments, they're just going to lose folks into the private sector and other fields, because the retirement benefits are a big part of how we've been able to recruit and retain workforce into these important timber industry jobs. Federal firefighters who, work for Sub-Base Bangor have the same issue. Under this administration's policies, we're already losing critical and talented workforce. And if my colleagues plow forward with the provisions of this amendment in the nature of a substitute, this bill, we are going to continue losing folks. But apparently the majority doesn't care. And the cuts to federal workers are just one piece of a larger bill that they're working on, a larger reconciliation bill that would cut $880 billion from Medicaid, that will impact folks like my sister born with complex disabilities. I know how important these federal programs are to my neighbors, to my constituents, to my family, and to people like them. And I will do everything that I can to fight this callous and cruel policymaking. And I urge my colleagues to vote against the amendment. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member. This committee print advances proposals that would slash pay, eliminate benefits, and undermine longstanding protections for federal employees. I stand with working class families. These are working class families, and therefore I cannot support this proposal. It's as simple as that. It's not about a Democrat or a Republican talking point. It's about standing with working class families, period. This administration is systematically gutting the federal workforce and replacing dedicated civil servants with unqualified DOJ representatives. Their abrupt and legally questionable appointments are undermining the great work that these employees do every single day. And I think that as a rule of thumb, again, regardless of what letter is in front of your name, we stand with working class families. We stand with supporting and upholding the values that make this country what it is, supporting our most vulnerable. And I think that's what this committee needs to keep in mind. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member seek recognition on the amendment, the nature of substitute? Ms. Stansberry.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think these markups are complicated and sometimes difficult to explain and understand because they get into technical details. So I want to try to break it down a little bit and actually with our current acting ranking member, maybe get a little bit into the details. So let me zoom way out here to talk about the entire enterprise that the GOP is engaged in right now and to lay down some facts. So first of all, what's important to understand is that over the last couple of months, the president has transmitted to the Hill a list of asks, and they really focus on making permanent tax breaks that were originally put into place in 2017 that are about to sunset. So these tax breaks are for billionaires, millionaires, mega corporations, and it's going to cost $7 trillion. And to pay for it, they want to try to offset some of those costs because our friends across the aisle are trying to claim that they're being fiscally responsible. But let's be clear, the math doesn't math because the offsets that they're seeking only add up to about $1.5 to $2 trillion. So if you do the math, 7 minus 2 equals 5, which is why this bill, the big bill that we're talking about, does not actually reduce the debt or the deficit. It actually will blow a hole through it by increasing debt spending by $5 trillion. And when you add it all up over 30 years, we're talking over $30 trillion in new spending for the United States government. So first of all, don't buy the baloney that this is somehow going to balance the debt. This is going to blow a giant hole in the debt. Now, let's talk about what is happening in this committee. So they passed the instructions out of the Senate, came back to the House. Very confusing. The Senate and the House Republicans couldn't agree on which package to go with, so they passed it all. So here we are now. Those instructions have gone down to each committee, and each committee now has to break it down in its own jurisdiction. So this committee can only work on things that are in its jurisdiction. We're in the oversight committee. Our jurisdiction is overseeing the federal government. And so this committee has been instructed through those resolution instructions to cut funding to supposedly offset cuts. So where are they trying to find those cuts? They're trying to find those cuts on our federal workers' backs. Now, let's be clear. Over the last 100 days, Donald Trump has fired over 200,000 probationary employees. Over 75,000 people have been forced to retire or leave the federal government. And now they're talking about taking away significant retirement benefits and turning the federal workforce over to an at-will workforce. What that means is that they want to strip away the protections for our federal workers so they can be fired at will at any moment. Okay, so that is actually what is inside this reconciliation piece that's in front of the committee today. And if you do not, as a federal employee, elect to be at will, if this passes, if this piece of legislation passes, you're going to have your retirement taxed, essentially, an additional 5%. So that means your pay is going to get cut unless you elect to be fireable. Is that correct, Mr. Lynch?
That is essentially correct. Yes,
so
absolutely.
Basically, what this package is doing is extortion. This is called extortion. This is in the vein of trying to say that they're going to balance the budget, which they're not, because it's still going to cost the American people $5 trillion to pass this overall tax package for billionaires. And by the way, these trillionaires are going to get an additional, let's say, $300,000 a year off of their taxes, while the rest of us are going to actually see prices go up with tariffs, the cost of living expenses, all of these issues. They're going to use this piece of the reconciliation package to further punish the 2.4 federal employees who provide your Social Security, who help with your VA benefits, who make sure that your Medicaid is taken care of. This is all about cutting federal workers, punishing federal workers, making life harder for Americans, and destroying the federal workforce. And I strongly oppose in every single way, every piece of what's in this piece of the reconciliation package. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion on the A&S? Gentlelady yields back. Any further discussion? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Request unanimous consent. I have here a letter from the National Association of Retired Federal Employees in opposition to this bill.
Without objection, so ordered. Now,
I have an amendment.
yeah, we're going to start with the amendments. So Chair recognize Mr. Lynch.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Yeah, the clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. The clerk will designate the amendment.
An amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Turner for defending federal workers and his own employees as they would be affected adversely by this legislation. Every member, their employees will also be affected in a similar way. Every federal employee in their districts will be affected.
I don't have this
Will be
guy's
harmed
amendment. It's
by
not
this
published
bill.
yet. So let's
In
listen.
the interest of the federal workforce that remains free of partisan influence and political cronyism, my amendment would strike the section of the bill that seeks to force new federal workers to surrender their due process rights and their employee protections and accept a new job classification as, quote, at will employees. subject to termination for any reason. Now, as a former union president and as a labor attorney and an employment attorney, I just want to make sure people understand what at-will means. An at-will employee can be fired for any reason or for no reason. So here's the president. He's trying to force everybody. Now, obviously, he would like to have partisans on his side brought into government. The sad fact is that all those people can be fired for no reason, for any reason. So it'll create this massive turnover if people are even willing to come on to the federal payroll without the benefits that they're going to get and with the changes that are being made here today. The bill before us presents incoming federal employees with the Hobson's choice. You can elect to give away all your rights, all your basic job protections that prevent you from being arbitrarily fired, and have your retirement contribution rate go up by an additional 5% of your pay. That's on top of the 4.4% that's already coming out of your paycheck. So it approximates 10% of your pay if you want your rights. If you want to have rights as an employee, you need to pay all this additional money. And that's for the duration of your employment. Alternatively, you can agree to waive your employee rights. You're basically, first of all, every federal employee has to give up their right to strike. So even if you wanted to stop work, you can't do that as a federal employee. Statutorily, federal employees are prohibited from engaging in strike. So if you thought your job was unsafe, you got to keep working. You can grieve, unless you do this, unless you give up all your rights, then you need to shut up and keep working for less. And your employer can just fire you for no reason. For any reason that comes into their head, you're gone. Considering that entry-level federal workers earn an annual starting salary as low as $30,000, the majority of new employees will essentially be forced to relinquish their constitutional and statutory job protections just to keep more income in their pockets for their families. Mr. Chairman, the primary response of this provision, the primary purpose of this provision appears to be to advance the implementation of Schedule F, President Trump's government-wide plan to strip federal workers of their civil service protections, arbitrarily fire them, and replace them with political loyalists. This shameless attempt to politicize our federal workforce is already the subject of multiple legal challenges brought by a coalition of federal employee unions and pro-democracy advocates, with the strong support of the Democratic House Litigation Working Group, which I'm a member of. The statute governing the federal workforce, the Bipartisan Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, enshrined the merit system protection that federal employees should be protected against arbitrary action, personal favoritism, and coercion for partisan political purposes. Schedule F and the at-will provisions included in this bill fly in the face of that purpose. This provision is also an additional attack on federal workforce that out of duty already sacrifices critical rights enjoyed by their private sector counterparts. Every new federal employee swears an oath to serve the American people and carry out their public service now, knowing that they are expressly prohibited by statute from participating in any strike or work stoppages or asserting the right to strike, and even belonging to a union that asserts the right to strike against the federal government. A violation is a felony and punishable by imprisonment. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support my amendment to strike this egregious provision from the bill and preserve the dignity and the independence and respect that we all should have.
I refreshed the page and his amendment is still not on the website, so I can't even pull it up.
Gentleman yields back, and I recognize myself for a brief statement in opposition to the amendment. I do appreciate the length of the amendment, just 2 words and a number. I appreciate that. I sincerely do. I didn't have to spend a lot of time reading that. But I oppose the Lynch Amendment, number 1, which would significantly reduce deficit reduction in the committee's legislation by over $4.5 billion and result in the underlying print conflicting with our reconciliation instructions and comprising the legislative privileges. For that reason, I strongly oppose the Lynch amendment. Do any other members wish to speak on Lynch amendment number 1? Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico, you're recognized.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would love to just ask.
Reset the clock,
Oh.
please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would love to just ask a few questions about the amendment. So, again, zooming out a little bit, there's a lot to not like about this portion of the reconciliation package. As we said, I think it's an all-out attack on the federal workforce, and it kind of cuts at the heart of some of the major reasons why people stay in federal service, because it is not only them serving and doing their duty for the American people, but also you are making sure that you have a good retirement, you're taking care of your family. And also we want to make sure, especially, one of the things that I think is really important for the American people to understand is that after Richard Nixon resigned, there were major overhauls done to the federal service because of the corruption and the ways in which Nixon, bless you, used the federal workforce and service to carry out his own personal political vendetta. There were major reforms in the 1970s to the federal workforce rules and laws because we wanted to protect federal workers from being used as political agents of whoever was in power. And so the idea of trying to convert federal workers to at will undoes all of the good government reforms that were put into place in the 1970s after Nixon.
And
to
she's talking
protect
about the
federal
section
workforce. Is that correct, Mr. Lynch?
90004
That is absolutely
about the
correct.
at-will
Yeah.
employees.
And so it's really important to understand that that's why those protections are there. And the whole point of trying to convert people to at will is, again, to make it easier to make the federal workforce your political arm. And we don't want that. We're not an autocracy. We are a democracy. And we want to make sure that our federal employees are protected from the whatever whims of whoever's serving in power. So I do want to ask, though, Mr. Chairman, you said you oppose this amendment because of its impacts to the budget. Can you explain to me how does not allowing federal workers to be forced into an at-will situation affect the federal budget?
We have budget instructions. We're following through with the budget instructions. We've been very transparent about what this committee was going to do within our jurisdiction of budget reconciliation. This is our bill, and it's self-explanatory.
No, but I don't understand how. So Mr. Lynch's amendment is to strike section 90,004, which is the provision about at-will work. How does that affect the budget?
The employees who choose to not be at will have to pay higher contribution rates.
Say that again, please.
The employees who choose not to be at will have to pay higher contribution rates.
And how much money are you saying this will generate for the federal government? Or savings?
The Congressional Budget Office says $4.5 billion.
Over what period of time?
A decade.
A decade.
10 years.
Okay. So the idea here is that you.
But let me interrupt you. We're trying to
No, Mr. Chairman. I
make
understand
savings
that-
here, and you all you do is criticize.
The gentlelady's
You
time.
act
This
like
is
there's
actually-
no.
The gentlelady's
You act
time.
like there's
I'm
no
asking you a
fiscal
question.
crisis.
Mr.
here.
Chairman, it's the gentlelady's time.
I'm just asking the question about the monetary offset of at-will employees. So the idea is here that you're going to generate a few
That got
billion
awkward.
dollars over
A few billion
10
dollars.
Mr.
years-
Chairman, is it million or
here,
billion?
$2 billion.
Is it
there.
million or
over
billion?
10 years
Bill.
by taking away federal benefits and making the federal workforce fireable, undoing all of the good government reforms after Richard Nixon's corruption. I think that we just need to be, I just want to clarify, that's what you're saying. Cool. Okay. I think we got it. Thanks. I yield back.
Any other members seek recognition on the Lynch amendment? Mr. Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The problem with this bill is that it doesn't offer federal employees a real choice. It forces them into a lose-lose situation, which weakens the very protections that ensure fairness and due process. This package is literally a betrayal of the middle class. And as I said before, I think our litmus test is, do our proposals support working families or not? In Missouri alone, these proposals threaten the rights, healthcare, and financial security of thousands of federal workers. And let's be clear, in my district, Missouri's 1st district, over 186,000 people rely on Medicaid. And under Republican budget plans, their health care is at risk. And so again, we need to stand with working class families, and these proposals are an attack on working class families. It's pretty straightforward. I would yield my time back to Rep. Stanberry or to the ranking member.
I thank the gentleman. Again, the gentleman is on point with first of all, the impact of this on federal employees and the costs that this will incur in terms of performance at the federal level. Right now, we are in competition with the private sector. But through loyalty, through patriotism, in the case of the VA, about a third of our workers at the VA are veterans themselves. When I go through the Brockton VA in my district, which I do often, I ask them, were you in the military? More often than not, the answer is yes, and then they proudly tell me what branch of the service they were in and when they served, and they also express the spirit, the esprit de corps, the patriotism, and the obligation that they feel towards wounded veterans. All of that is wrapped up in being a federal employee at the VA, and some of the other departments and agencies where federal employees work each and every day. So what we're doing is the president has proposed that we're going to go back to, I think it's 1979 in terms of the number of people working at the VA. So he wants to cut 80,000 people from the VA. Now, because of the high number of veterans we have at the VA, out of that 80,000 people he wants to cut, that's what his budget resolution anticipates. 27,000 of the people that he's firing at the VA are veterans themselves. So all of this bill here today is just in furtherance of that same mission. And again, I appreciate the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner, standing up for his workers at the VA. I just hope every member here is willing to do that. I understand the goal of savings and of balancing the budget, but this is not the way you do it. You don't go after people at the VA. We had the Inspector General for the VA do a whole survey of every single, so there are like 86 major medical centers, the VA medical centers across the country. And we asked him, give us a report card on how we're doing with our veterans. He came back and he said two things. He said, number one, 80% of the hospitals that I've visited need a medical director. You need to hire a medical director. And he said, 86% of the hospitals that I visited, you need more nurses. They are the backbone of our healthcare system. So what did Mr. Trump do? First day in office, announced 2,400 cuts, 2,400 people laid off at the VA, and 80,000 more to come. So Our veterans are waiting longer for appointments. There are fewer people caring for them. And this bill is in furtherance of that same mission. So we used to agree on stuff on veterans. We don't anymore. And I miss the support that we used to have, bipartisanship for our veterans. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seek recognition on Lynch Amendment number 1? Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. You know, walking in today, I didn't really know how I felt or what I would do, because as people ask me about how I can get so passionate in this committee about certain topics, I recently had an opportunity to talk to a group of people in Las Vegas, actually last weekend, and there was a woman who was almost in tears as she told me about the number of family members that have been fired from the federal government. And she said, Rep. Crockett, you give us so much hope, and I don't understand how people are so callous.
I'm going to pause real quick and just from what they're saying, I know they're just debating. I know there are a lot of messages coming through, and people are sending messages about where I stand on this. This is a apolitical channel. I don't stand, I'm not going to say Democrats or Republicans or anything like that. None of this impacts me directly, but it does impact me indirectly. I want to be clear on that, because I'm a 20-year Air Force veteran, and I go to the VA, right? So what he just said about the VA waiting 6 months to schedule an appointment, that is a real thing. And it's kind of crazy how long I have to wait for the VA appointment. But what I am worried about is waiting longer appointments for the rest of the veterans. So if you're brand new to my channel, this is I have been making financial independence videos for a while, and I have videos on the TSP because I'm trying to help military members on active duty, guard, reserve, retirees, even the feds, help them understand how the TSP works, how FERS works. And I've been doing this for the last 3-4 years on this channel. And 2025 has been crazy. And this is why I'm doing this, to give you guys the content that we need, because this is the biggest change that I have ever seen since 2014. But this is also the biggest change as far as the pension goes since 2017, when the blended retirement system came out for the military. So been doing this for a while. And I also have a private community for the TSP members, TSP investors. So you can check it out on my website if you want to. But I don't want to pitch anything today. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I do want to give you my insight about this and why I'm sharing this content. And I think we need to have a good understanding of why they're doing it. And it's something that we are not entirely sure about where they're coming out with these numbers, right? And we should question it. And I'm going to have live stream about the tax cuts and the tax raises that are coming out from the Ways and Means Committee next week. No, actually in 2 weeks. And I'm going to talk about that. And today's live stream is more about the federal employees and potentially the federal retirees. And they have amendments coming out, and nothing is really final until they vote on this. And that's why today's meeting is going to be very important. And I know these representatives, they got to say what their constituents have told them to say. And I'm seeing that I guess they're getting like a high volume of emails and phone calls in their offices from their districts. The guy from Missouri, they have like a lot of he has like over almost 200,000 federal employees in this district. So this is something that even the Republican side, they're opposing this bill. And it's like, what did Mr. Turner say? He said it's unfair for the people who have put in time for the last 20, 30, 40 years, not 40 years, but 20 and 30 years, and change the game, in the middle of the game, change the rules in the middle of the game. So one Republican did come out and say, I completely oppose this bill. So, we'll see how this goes. It looks like they have been talking about section 90,004, so 90004, about the at-will employees. They don't understand why they're switching, making these employees to go to at-will versus, merit-based, right? again, I'm going to be very clear on this. This bill does not impact me directly, but it will impact me indirectly if the VA employees are cut by 80,000, like that gentleman just said. My veteran community will be affected. Just something that I always need a VA to kind of work on my health stuff from going to Iraq and Afghanistan and the burn pits that I work at. But, just to kind of give you an insight on what's going on.
Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Request a roll call vote.
A recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Chair, for what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry, seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment desk.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. The clerk will designate the amendment.
An amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14, is offered by Mr. Perry of Pennsylvania.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain the Perry amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 weeks ago, this was passed in this very committee. So I'm bringing it back around so we can consider it in the proposal before us. This amendment requires federal employee unions to reimburse federal agencies for their use of agency or taxpayer resources and official time spent each quarter. Federal agencies will assess public sector unions a fee to utilize their resources such as office space, parking space, equipment, expenses incurred while on union time and any official union time used by labor representatives affiliated with these organizations. American taxpayers would be absolutely shocked to learn that federal employees are paid for work hours while supporting public sector unions rather than the agency operations, missions, and programs they were actually hired to support in the first place. They're not doing the work that they were hired to do. They're doing work in furtherance of their own personal and organizational goals. And that's fine. It's just the question is who should be paying for that. According to OPM, official time logged by federal employees can be used for lobbying Congress, alongside allowing certain employees to spend 100% of their time handling union representation functions while still being paid by federal agencies to do federal agency work. In 2019, before President Biden halted OPM tracking reporting of official time, it was reported that employees across the federal government were paid $135 million to do 2.6 million hours of union work while on the clock at their other government jobs that they were actually hired to do. Forcing the American taxpayer to foot the bill for federal union organizing is outrageous and absurd. It's quite simple. If federal employees and resources are going to be used for union tasks, the union should have to pay for that, not the taxpayers. American taxpayers are paying government employees to do a job, not the bidding and strategizing of their organized bargaining unit. According to CBO, this amendment would generate $130 million in revenue over 10 years. I'm simply asking the members of this committee to vote at least exactly like they did 3 weeks ago. And of course, my friends on the other side of the aisle, if they've finally seen the light and realize that they've come here to support their constituents and taxpayers as opposed to the special interests in Washington, they can vote with us too. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time and encourage a positive or affirmative vote.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ranking Member Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Perry's statement, his amendment rather, would require agencies to assess fees to public sector labor organizations for use of agency resources, including office space, parking spaces, equipment, and other expenses while performing non-agency business. This amendment would also require agencies to charge public sector labor organizations fees for any time an agency employee who is a labor representative spends performing union business while on the job.
Okay, so what Scott Perry just proposed is by adding another section to the proposal, and that is to eliminate official time unless unions compensate the federal government. So the Republican side wants to charge federal unions, well, not employees, but the labor organizations for using for their use of agency resources as well as any official time. So I just want to make it clear on that. This is in addition to the proposal that's on there.
And even the Department of the Treasury and Department of Health and Human Services. This amendment is an attack on official time, which is critical for the efficient management of the federal workforce and a high priority for unions that represent federal employees. Official time reduces employee turnover. It improves customer service. It prevents costly litigation and grievances and leads to quicker and more efficient implementation of agency initiatives. I just want to give one example. So let's use the post office, United States Postal Service. So today we have 200,000 less postal employees than we did 20 years ago. And the reason that is the case is because the union, the postal unions, sat down with the Postmaster General and talked about automation. How do we make this process move faster with less people? How do we save the postal customer money? And yet, how do we do it without attrition, without a lot of layoffs, involuntary? So they worked out an agreement. They brought in high-speed sorting machines, all kinds of new technology into the Postal Service. And over 20 years, we've been able to reduce the number of postal employees by 200,000. That happened by sitting down and working things out on the job and in the workplace. That was done in a way that we reassign people who used to sort that mail by hand. But it was sitting down and working it out. And that saved, the postal customer a huge amount of money. Think about it, 200,000 less people doing that job. And it's because we have the ability for the unions representing the employees collectively, representing their interests, making sure they get treated with respect, and that we didn't have mass layoffs when we went to technology. We brought in high-speed equipment and automation. We worked it out. I'm a former union president. Your mission as a union representative is to help the business, make it more efficient, make sure those jobs are protected, make sure the company is successful. And that's the job of the postal unions. I remember September 11th. Right after September 11th, a bunch of post offices, they had threats from anthrax. We had right here at the Brentwood Postal Facility here that serves Washington, D.C. We had some terrorists mailing anthrax to offices here on Capitol Hill. We shut down Longworth. I got elected on September 11th, so I remember this vividly. We had two postal workers, Joseph Cursine and Mr. Morris. Both of them died. Those are postal workers that worked at Brentwood, died from anthrax inhalation because they were sorting mail. Now, if it was a private company, those employees would have walked, right? They would have walked. I'm not going to throw mail. Are you kidding me? Bring that anthrax home to my family, my kids? The unions, the postal unions met with their members, and they said, we just been attacked, a terrorist attack. We have to keep the mail going. So because they took that oath and they served this country, they kept working. I had two sisters with small kids at the time. They went to work. With their union support. And that's what we're punishing today.
I do have a couple of postal service clients in my private community. So they've been working like 30, 35, 36 years.
I want to thank Mr. Perry for his amendment. He and I have been working together for this policy goal, and I look forward to pursuing this legislation through regular order. However, for the purposes of this committee's reconciliation efforts, I must unfortunately oppose this amendment from my good friend. Do any other members seek recognition? Miss Presley. Or, I'm sorry, Miss Crockett. Miss Crockett.
All right. Just briefly, I want to reiterate the words of my colleague, and it looks like this may go down since you're opposing it. So I will not belabor the point. I will say that as you do go forward, Mr. Perry, because I know that this is something that will most likely come back, I would ask, I know that in the second to last paragraph, there is this definition of union time, and it lays out the term union time means the time an employee of an agency who is a labor representative for a labor organization spends performing non-agency business while on duty. I would ask for further clarification of what non-agency business would mean, because while you may not believe, or I may not believe, we may define what non-agency business looks like completely differently. And the reason that I say that is you were talking about people campaigning. And the reality is that right now, you see those of us on our side of the aisle, we are not trying to do things like union busting. We are trying to make sure that those workers have those protections. And so as far as I'm concerned, campaigning or trying to elect someone who aligns with making sure that you have those protections, so that someone like my constituent who passed away because he overheated after serving our country for 40 years as a postal worker, I then had the union come in and telling me about issues as it relates to work, for sure. But they absolutely felt comfortable coming and telling me and supporting my candidacy, because they know that when I come to work, I am going to support them. And to be perfectly honest, any candidate that is trying to break up their ability to bargain for contracts, to break up their ability to actually do things such as make sure that they have worker protections, to make sure that they are not going to be at will, to make sure that they have the ability to unionize, I would say that that is actually absolutely on par with doing the business of that organization, because that is going to be a better way to make sure that people will actually want to work for the post office. I can tell you, I don't know anything about your district, but I can tell you that in my district, we have consistently had a problem with getting people who actually wanted to work for the post office. And frankly, when we're having conversations like this, and when the country, when the United States is leading the way in firings in the entire country, it is the federal government that has fired more people than anybody else. I frankly don't know who gonna come and sign up and want to do this work, especially to do it at will, especially to do it in a way that says, even if you are going out and making sure that you are going to get somebody who is going to serve in a seat that is going to make sure that you can be protected, I'm going to say that that's non-agency business. As far as I'm concerned, that is agency business. So as you go forward, I have a feeling of what I believe your intent is, but I think that you're going to need to better define that, because you may run into this area of it's up to who is interpreting it. And when I interpret it, I absolutely believe anybody that is going to protect them as a union, that is absolutely agency business. With that, I will yield.
Does any other member seek recognition on the Perry amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I might be recognized.
Yes, Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume.
And I will be brief. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your opposition to this amendment. I would urge others to be in opposition. You know, in Baltimore, we've got a simple term for this. It's called union busting and union bashing. And we need to remember that all union contracts are negotiated documents. They're negotiated by the union and the government vis-a-vis the government agency. And so all the understandings that are a part of that really are legal. It's a binding document. And this has been taking place for years under Democratic and Republican administrations. So I would urge members of this committee to reject this amendment.
Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support my colleague's amendment. I don't know if it's going to clear reconciliation scrub or not, but knowing that my chairman does support the language, and yet in his role as chair has to oppose changes to the underlying bill so that we can move forward with the reconciliation process, I'm going to say I support Mr. Perry's intentions here. And I think it's important that it's on the record that conservative Republicans stand behind that legislative language. I'm going to support the amendment. I yield.
Gentleman yield back. Any other discussion on the Perry amendment? Seeing none. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed.
Okay,
For what
so
purpose
that
does
amendment did
Mr.
not
Mfume?
pass.
Oh, well, okay, before that, if it's okay, the ranking member has some unanimous consent request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few unanimous consent requests on a letter from the AFL-CIO in opposition to this bill, a letter from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights in opposition to this bill, the Professional Managers Association in opposition to this bill, and the National Federation of Federal Employees in opposition to this bill, as well as the National Treasury Employees Union in opposition to this bill, the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO, in opposition to this bill, the Federal Managers Association in opposition to this bill, the National Postal Mail Handlers Union in opposition to this bill, the National Rural Letter Carriers Association in opposition to this bill, the International Association of Firefighters, Edzo Kelly, in opposition to this bill, the Federal.
No, that was the
Technical
amendment
Engineers,
that did not get
AFL-CIO,
passed.
CLC, in
Amendment to
opposition this
the change.
Without objection, so ordered. For what
Specifically
purpose
about the
does
labor
Mr. Mfume
union.
seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk distribute the amendment to all members? And now will the clerk designate the amendment?
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Mr. Mfume of Maryland.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Mfume, is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our nation, I think it goes without saying, we've always taken a great deal of pride in the idea that government serves all Americans, not just those lined with one political party, ideology, or anything else. This amendment upholds those core principles of fairness and privacy in our federal hiring process. More specifically, it amends Section 9004 to prohibit any questions regarding a prospective applicant's political party membership or activity. Prohibits all such questions. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been rather focused on the concept of meritocracy, so I want to point out the fact that no one should have any trouble supporting this amendment that seeks to ensure that employment in public service is based on merit and skills, not political affiliation. Allowing an applicant's political party affiliation to be a deciding factor for a job opportunity really opens the door to implicit bias, discrimination, and the erosion of the public trust that we've always had in our nonpartisan civil service. And frankly, I'm concerned that it's nothing short, quite frankly, of political coercion. Moreover, leaving politics out of the federal government establishes confidence and trust from our constituents. Federal workers, as has been said over and over and over again, should not have to worry about being punished or fired for expressing their First Amendment right to disagree with this president or any president. I urge my colleagues, upon real consideration of this, to really work now to preserve the integrity of our civil service and to protect the rights of all who wish to serve this nation by supporting this amendment. And I would ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to be entered into the record an Associated Press article from January the 13th, and it says Trump teams questions civil servants about who they voted for.
Without objection, so ordered.
I yield back to the ranking member should he choose to speak.
I thank the gentleman. I welcome the opportunity. So, Mr. Mfume, the gentleman from Maryland's amendment here goes right to the heart of the spoils system. So, early in this country's history, back in the 1800s, it was openly accepted that each incoming administration would fire all the people from the earlier administration. Thomas Jefferson did it to John Adams' people, and that carried right through the 1800s until about 1880, and then there was a movement to get away from the spoils system, where whoever the incoming president was would wipe out all the federal employees and then bring in their own partisans. What drove that was in the 1880s, President Garfield was operating under the old spoils system, and one of his campaign workers, who had made a couple of small contributions and also handed out some leaflets for him, wanted to be appointed ambassador to France. And President Garfield wouldn't do it. So the gentleman shot him, killed him, because he had been rejected the job, and he felt because he had supported the president, he was owed that job. Now, we've come a long way from that until today. And now President Trump would like to get rid of all the people that have been in government. And he doesn't care if they were appointed by Republicans or Democrats. He wants to get rid of them all and bring in his own people, So he wants to go back to the spoils system. And, Mr. Mfume's amendment goes right against that and requires that political interrogation not be part of the hiring process. And I think this amendment, serves the American people, serves our government, so that we won't be firing all the federal employees every 4 years, especially when a new president comes in. We won't be doing that. That's not good. If you have, federal researchers and, nurses, people in different agencies, you don't want a new employee coming in every 4 years. And that's what will happen if we don't accept Mr. Mfume's amendment. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. I'll recognize myself. This amendment introduces policy changes into an otherwise budget-related matter and honestly should receive no further consideration. For the purposes of this committee's reconciliation efforts, I oppose the Mfume amendment. Do any other members seek recognition? Ms. Crockett?
Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that we did have the first amendment that was brought forward that was seeking by the ranking member, that was seeking to actually delete a portion of what's been proposed, which is section 9004, which is introducing a policy change to change the status of employees from their current status and make them all at will. So we should consider policy changes if that's what we're going to do. I want to say that if any of you stood against Project 2025, which so many of you said that you didn't know anything about Project 2025, y'all weren't introducing Project 2025, and acted as if it was this mythical boogeyman that the Democrats were making up. This is straight out of the playbook of Schedule F. This is a Schedule F issue in which we are trying to make sure that there are only loyalists within the federal government. And let me tell you why it is problematic. It is anti-American. It is anti-democratic to decide that you are going to do things like this, because what happens is systems start to fail. Not only do they fail us as the American people, because now we're losing skill sets, we're losing experience, we're losing all those things in name of somebody saying the only qualification that I probably need to have is to say that I love red hats. At the end of the day, if we really care about this country, the only way that we're going to survive is if there is actually a robust debate every once in a while when one needs to take place. Because right now, one of the reasons that some of y'all don't want to show up and attend a town hall is because there has been no resistance. Because right now, it is only about people who will say, I will do what my leader says. And that is not what America is. So why would we do this to our federal workforce? If they are doing their jobs, if they are going through reviews, which we do have a review process, and if there are no issues in their reviews, as we saw, as it has come out.
Okay, just real quick to answer Don's question here. Yes, they did. I'm going to review that amendment after they're done with the committee hearing. I'm just trying to minimize interrupting them as much as I can. I know this is very, very political, but they did hit the high 3 versus high 5. They're keeping that high 5 in place, but they added the date to it, and I'll get into that after the hearing.
There have been testimonies about people that never thought that their fearless leader that they were voting for would actually come for their job. And he did. So if you really don't want to be in a situation where, say, you've got the opposite of Donald Trump and a far left Democrat who says, you know what, I am going to be the anti-Trump. I'm going to do exactly the opposite of everything that he did. I'm going to hurt those that supported his candidacy the way that he did that to us. If you don't want to run the risk of that, then I would say that this is just a smart amendment. This isn't a Democratic amendment. It's not a Republican amendment. It is a smart amendment. And I don't believe that if it's okay for that first section that we dealt with to be in this, which would be an absolute policy change, then I think that we can deal with this policy change as well. And I will yield.
Any other members seek recognition? Mr. Superman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to speak in favor of this amendment. We're trying to keep politics out of certain parts of the federal workforce. And for the reasons people have said, this is important, but I also want to add, I represent many of the federal workers who are losing their jobs. And many of them feel like they're losing their jobs because their work or they themselves have been targeted for their political beliefs. But really, what's happening is we're deciding to choose loyalty over competence. And when you do that, you end up with really poor results, because in the end, in the theater of war, it doesn't matter who's fighting with you. It doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or Republican. They just want to do what's best for a country. When you're studying cancer research and trying to cure cancer, it doesn't matter if the cancer patient is a Democrat or Republican. What really matters is that we have the very best and brightest in our federal workforce. But instead, what's happening with these loyalty tests and with these questions about people's political leanings is we're ending up having a brain drain in our federal government. And that's hurting our country. It doesn't just hurt the federal workforce. It doesn't just hurt my district, although it does. It hurts every single American across this country who is served by the federal workforce. And we are losing the best and brightest now because of this. This amendment, all it says is that we want to take politics out of the federal workforce. We want to keep politics out of the federal workforce. And we do not want loyalty tests when we're trying to hire the best and brightest. And so I look at another sector, technology, and I've had many hearings recently on wanting to have the best technology for our national security apparatus and within our federal government to serve the people. We're losing technologists because they feel like they're being told, asked whether or not they're a good Democrat or a good Republican. And they're being told that it's not about their skills, it's about their loyalty to this president and loyalty to his party. And so that's going to hurt every single American. I yield back.
Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none, the question is now on the Mfume number 1 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I would request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what purpose does Mr. Mfume again seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the
Okay,
amendment?
so that previous amendment
Clerk
did
will
not get
now
passed.
designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2 to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Mr. Mfume of Maryland.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This amendment in short order would amend section 90006 of the legislation by prohibiting the facilitation of action of purging federal employees from the workforce upon their political affiliation, particularly when they apply for federal employee health benefits. Those benefits have been embedded in the way we do business and what we guarantee our civil workforce and ought to be protected. Health benefits are not a privilege that's tied to political alignment. They are a fundamental part of the employment package offered, as I said, to federal employees who serve this nation, regardless of their personal or political beliefs. They are not just in one section of the country, they are in every state and indeed in everybody's congressional district. So this ought to be just a common sense approach. And many federal workers rely on the Federal Employee Health Benefit Program to receive their health care for themselves, obviously, but also their eligible family members. This benefit cannot, nor should it be weaponized as a mechanism to identify, to punish, to exclude because of a political party that one may or may not belong to. Not only that, it's really none of our business, quite frankly, what party someone belongs to if they are a federal worker. Doing that undermines the core values of our democracy, and obviously it starts to weaken and eventually destroy civil service as we know it. Elon Musk and his Doge employees have already fired over 200,000 employees and forced more than 75,000 more to take deferred determination agreements that would pay them throughout the fiscal year as they began to leave the jobs that, in my opinion, they were forced to quit. Gutting federal agencies is not saving the government money. It is not improving efficiency. In fact, in just the first 100 days of the current administration, we have seen more money spent on firing people than saving money, not to mention the money spent to rehire the people who weren't supposed to be fired in the first place. So this sort of continued attack on federal employees primarily harms the middle class of our country. It hurts people in all communities. In the state of Maryland, we've got 144,000 such employees that have gone about serving this country with distinction for many, many years. In my own district, that number is 19,000. Federal workers are the heart blood of the nation. If you just check with any of them in your own districts, you don't have to listen to me or believe what I'm saying is accurate. And so these mass firings are both un-American and illegal. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, not just for the federal workers that it will protect and their health care, but also the democratic principles that it seeks to uphold. With that, Mr. Chair, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'll recognize myself. This amendment introduces policy changes into an otherwise budget-related matter and should receive no further consideration. Furthermore, this amendment does not contain a CBO score as required by reconciliation, so we don't know its impact on the committee's net savings budgetary instructions. For these reasons and the purposes of this committee's reconciliation efforts, I must oppose the Infume Amendment number 2. Do any other members seek recognition? Seeing none. The question is now on the Infume Amendment number 2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I would request a recorded
A
vote.
recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Okay, we're going to suspend for 1 second here. Okay. We'll resume. For what purpose does Mr. Lynch seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I believe I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to
No,
all
it's a new
members. The
amendment.
clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2 to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve point of order. The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment would ensure that retirement benefits for federal employees who are also military veterans are not reduced by the new retirement calculations mandated by this bill. So currently, the retirement benefits of federal workers under the Federal Employees Retirement System and the previous Civil Service Retirement System are calculated based on the average of the highest 3. consecutive years of salary during
They're
their
talking about the
federal
high 3, high
careers.
5 salary now.
The underlying bill would change that and alter this longstanding formula to instead base retirement benefits on an average of the highest 5 consecutive years of base federal pay. So this new formula will reduce a federal worker's retirement benefits by thousands of dollars each year. And while I strongly support the amendment that will be offered by my colleague, Mr. Min, to strike the high 5 formula overall in the bill in its entirety, I'm offering this additional amendment because I believe that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle can at least agree that we should not reduce the retirement benefits of military veterans who have transitioned to the federal civilian employment. The federal government is the largest single employer of our veterans. In fact, our federal workforce of more than 2.4 million employees is made up of 30% of more than 650,000 veterans. That's who the federal workforce is. 650,000 veterans served this country, put on the uniform of this country courageously. That is why the Nonpartisan Partnership for Public Service reports that veterans are uniquely impacted and have been exposed to significant risk by the Trump administration's effort to arbitrarily downsize the federal government. In only 100 days since he took office, President Trump, at the direction of Elon Musk, has already conducted mass layoffs across the federal government that have included at least 6,000 military veterans. The Trump administration has also targeted our broader veterans community by firing at least 2,400 VA employees amid a severe staffing shortage of 3,000 healthcare positions at the VA facilities, as I mentioned earlier, and a backlog of more than 250,000 veterans benefit claims. President Trump even fired workers at the Veterans Suicide Crisis Hotline during an epidemic of veteran suicide. He's also proceeding with plans to indiscriminately cut an additional 80,000 jobs at the VA at a time when the agency is seeing a 40% increase in veterans healthcare enrollment and a 30% spike in veteran toxic exposure claims since the enactment of our bipartisan Republicans and Democrats PAC Act in 2022. We don't need to make matters worse by reducing the retirement benefits of military veterans who proudly chose to extend their public service by working in the federal government. Let us remember that federal statutes such as the Veterans Preference Act of 1944 reflect our enduring bipartisan respect for the placement, protection, and retention of veterans in the federal workforce. I urge my colleagues to remember, look, I point back to the Brockton VA facility in my district in Brockton, Massachusetts. When I go through there, so many of the nurses and attendants there are veterans. It's uncanny how many of them have served our country in the military. And there's a great vibe there. They love caring for their fellow wounded veterans. And I think there's a holistic and actually a medical benefit by having veterans cared for at a VA hospital instead of in a regular hospital, because there's that camaraderie and support. And
I will speak to this as a veteran. The veteran community is strong, probably the strongest I've ever been in since when I joined the military way back in the days, 20 years in the Air Force. And every time I go to the VA, the community is just strong. We always talk crap about, as the Air Force, the Army guys would talk crap about us. The Navy guys would make fun of the Navy, the Marines, right? And then when we go out to a bar and then there's someone who's never served make fun of the military, and it's like we all kind of stand together and kind of like, what did you just say about us, right? So what he's saying about the veterans, that's 100% true. And what we're talking about, the reason why I'm doing this live stream, again, if you're just tuning in, is because my community is largely veterans, and I talk about the TSP, and I talk about the FERS pension, and I talk about the blended retirement system. So that's why it's important for me to kind of relay this information
to our country and the federal workforce. I cannot support this amendment, which does not contain a score from the Congressional Budget Office to determine its budgetary impact on our committee's instruction to save $50 billion as required in this budget reconciliation process. Do any other members seek recognition? Seeing none. Seeing none, the question is now on the Lynch Amendment number 2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a roll call.
Recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what purpose does Ms. Stansberry seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will please distribute. The clerk will please designate the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14, is offered by Ms. Stansberry of New Mexico.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentle lady from New Mexico is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am offering an amendment this morning here to address the major concern that the vast majority of Americans and especially the constituents in my district have shared with me, which is the unfettered attacks that we've seen over the last 100 days on vital programs that support our communities, whether that's Social Security, Medicaid, food and housing assistance programs, or just the vital programs that people depend on every day. We were just talking about veterans benefits. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, I'm just coming off of a town hall tour across my district. We did 15 town halls across 10 counties in rural and urban New Mexico. We heard from over 15,000 New Mexicans, and the most important issues that we heard in every single town hall, and these were not just people of the same party, these were just New Mexicans across the board from all different ideological backgrounds, all different communities, was that they are afraid right now of what they're seeing with the federal government and cutbacks to Social Security programs, the proposals that are in this reconciliation package that would impact Medicaid, the proposals that are in front of this committee that would cut back the federal workforce that provides Social Security benefits and VA benefits, cuts to housing and food assistance programs, and the general lawlessness that we've seen across the board in the way in which this administration has been carrying out these cuts and have been enabled by the GOP here now, especially with this reconciliation package. So I want to read my amendment. It's very straightforward. It says, the president or any member of the president's cabinet or any officer or employee of a federal agency may not take any action, including an action related to staffing, office realignments, budgetary, data, or operational changes that would impact the delivery or timing of vital services that Americans depend on, including Social Security, Medicaid, food assistance, housing, income supports, or other programs, or two, to attempt to privatize these services or programs. It's a very straightforward amendment. I would hope that my friends across the aisle, of course, I doubt they will, would support this amendment. I hear our friends go on TV daily and say that they have no intent to cut Medicaid, even though their instructions for this reconciliation package say that they're instructing the Committee of Jurisdiction to cut funding by $880 billion. We know that this would impact almost 250,000 New Mexicans and the healthcare system of our entire state. We know that millions of Americans will lose access to healthcare if these Medicaid benefits get cut. We know that over 150,000 New Mexicans, especially our elders, our seniors, and our low-income families, would lose access to food assistance, whether that's SNAP assistance to buy groceries or whether that's school lunches if these cuts go through. And we know that this will also impact our communities across the board in just the basic programs and services, whether it's the VA, Social Security, or any of these programs. So this amendment says that the administration has got to stop doing that because it's hurting the American people. And with that, I yield back.
Now recognize myself. This amendment introduces policy changes into an otherwise budget-related matter and should receive no further consideration. Furthermore, this amendment does not contain a CBO score as required by reconciliation, so we don't know its impact on the committee's net savings budgetary instructions. For these reasons and the purposes of this committee's reconciliation efforts, I oppose the amendment. Does any other member seek recognition? Yes, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's interesting to hear you kind of use the form language of we don't understand the impact. The idea that Ms. Stansberry proposed an amendment that specifically talks about vital programs, literally not extracurriculars, but literally what people depend upon to actually survive and live. And the idea that our retort to whether or not someone will be able to eat, to whether or not someone will have a roof over their head.
So they're talking a lot about Medicaid, but this committee doesn't have the jurisdiction to vote on the Medicaid, but it is the Energy and Commerce Committee, and they don't have that markup until next week anyway. So we're not going to know what the Medicaid cuts are supposed to be. That's going to be a different video. And again, this is kind of focusing on the federal employee pension plan. And we're going to have a different live stream next time. That's going to be from the Ways and Means Committee about the Social Security tax cuts. No taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, and some other proposals that are in there. So when they have that markup, then we'll know for sure. And just to answer your question about the high five, some of you guys probably are working and you have to go or something like that. And I want to make it clear on this. It's not a final bill. It's not a final bill. And the latest proposal is that changing the high five for January 1st, 2027. That is the latest proposal. But we're watching this right now because we could have another amendment that gets passed and say, oh, let's do 2026. I don't want you to, I'm not saying that I want you to stay on this live stream forever with me. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this for any monetary reasons. And I'm doing this to relay the information. I don't want you to leave here and say, oh, you know what? Everything is good. It's not till 2027. And then you miss some of the information and they come back and say, oh, wait a minute. It went back to 2025 or 2026. That's why, having the latest information is important. This live stream is just kind of showing you the process of the amendments here, amendments there. Some Republicans have already opposed the high five salary as opposed to high three. When they voted on striking the high five salary, it got struck down. They didn't pass. So it looks like that amendment is going to stay on there. But as far as the date that's going to be effective, the latest amendment says January 1st, 2027. The one prior was upon enactment. And that freaked people out because holy crap, if they vote on this by May, June, July, it could happen like that right away, right? So I want to make sure that you guys get the latest information. I don't want you to leave this live stream and say, Sai said 2027, so it's all good. No, nothing is good until this is final. So I'm going to keep this apolitical and I'm going to give you the information as much as I can.
On what Mr. Lynch is saying here. First of all, this is just preserving the existing programs that Americans are already depending on and are speaking loud and clear. In fact, the polling shows this week that 2/3 of Americans are completely.
Yes, and that's correct from Jamie. They haven't discussed anything about the Social Security supplements yet. Just a representative, Mr. Turner from the Republican side, did say he opposes the Social Security supplement at the beginning of this committee hearing, but they haven't had any in-depth discussion about opposing or striking it or anything like that. So, we're going to be here for a while. 2 hours into the live stream now, so they're still arguing back and forth about these.
Food on the.
And I'm going to grab something to drink. I'm going to step away just for like 2 minutes, so try to behave yourselves.
See is the absolute attack on their civil liberties and free speech and their freedom. And I actually went to the Social Security office in my district last week and was denied entry and told to call a regional office after I had an appointment. and spoke to people who are waiting, who have literally been waiting for days and weeks because Elon Musk has crashed the social security system, firing people. Their computer systems are down. Our call centers are completely overwhelmed, and people cannot get appointments for months. This is what's happening in America right now. And that is why I introduced this amendment, to protect those programs and to fight for the American people and to fight for the programs that we know they depend on so that they can survive. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Green.
Hi. I'd like to point something out that our Democrat colleagues know this, because they did reconciliation before when they were in charge. And it may be hard for some of the freshman Dems to understand, but this is not a policy debate. That's not what reconciliation is. This is a budget process. And so for the American people watching at home, our Democrat colleagues are sitting here trying to score points and spread more lies and divisiveness about Republicans in order to spread more garbage across the country. But this is about budget, Mr. Chairman. And this committee is trying to do serious work, and we need to stay focused on budget, and that's for the American people. And it is very serious that's what we remain focused on here in our work on oversight. And the Democrats know that provisions must be carefully crafted because they did it before. And it has to be scored by CBO to be included in this budget bill. And that's what we're trying to do, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to point that out for the people watching at home so they are not swayed by this entertainment today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mr. Lynch.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say our federal budget reflects our values. When we fund the VA, so it's not just about numbers. It's about the mission and the purpose of our budget.
With all due respect, you do understand our federal budget is $2.5 trillion in
Reclaiming
debt.
my time, though.
I know,
I'm just saying,
but our values,
reclaiming
we
my
can't have
time, Mr.
values
Chairman,
where we
you don't get to just interject, Mr. Chairman.
You know what? I
When
think you've already spoken, so
I
you're
have
out
not
of order.
spoken on this. I borrowed on somebody else's time.
All right, go ahead.
I borrowed somebody else's time, and I will speak.
Well, speak.
this
You all
budget
have
does
you
reflect
all have put our
values.
country
It
in
does-
debt.
does reflect
Kids are
values.
graduating from
You're
college.
about to put our
with
country in
debt.
$4 trillion more debt.
I don't think you all could find $1 billion
on.
in savings.
Come
You don't
on.
care about the
Come on.
Congressional Budget Office
Would-
scores because you
Mr.
don't care
Chairman,
what anything
reclaiming my
costs. You
time.
just want to spend
Reclaiming my time.
hard-working American
Reclaiming-
taxpayers' money.
I asked to
Give
restore
him
the
5
time.
minutes. You can talk all you want. I want everyone in America to see how much
Mr.
opposition
Chairman,
you all have to.
You're out of
trying to
order.
get the-
You're out
get
of order.
fiscal
Your
order
own
here. Go
chairman,
ahead,
and
go
you're
ahead,
out of
go
order.
ahead, Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, without
This got spicy
interruption,
real quick.
what we decide here in the budget is the point I'm trying to make is it's not just dollars and cents. It's about where that money goes and what purposes and what priorities it reflects. And those, governing is about making decisions. And we choose to fund things that in this country we have honored for a very long time. And that, I have to say, in my 25 years in Congress, we have had very little disagreement on funding veterans benefits. I have to say that. I don't think I can count on one hand the time we had disagreements over 25 years when we talk about how do we care for our veterans, things like that. And I miss that because now we're fighting tooth and nail about whether we're going to lay off 80,000 employees at the VA. What I'm saying is that, sure, it's about the budget, but underlying that budget is our priorities as a country, what we consider to be worthwhile. And I feel that veterans benefits are worthwhile. Veterans health care is worthwhile. The way we treat our federal employees is important. It is intrinsic to the work of the federal government and how we we help the most vulnerable as well as, average everyday Americans on Social Security, on Medicaid. So I've had layoffs recently in one of my big health centers, community health centers, laid off 60 people in a city that can't afford that. And that's because of decisions that are being made on the budget, on the numbers on the budget. We're going to cut over $800 billion on Medicaid. I've got nursing homes. So I got seniors who are, they can't go out and get another job. They're in nursing homes. Their families are trying to care for them. We're cutting 40% of the income for those long-term care nursing homes for elderly are being impacted by the numbers in this budget. And that's very troublesome. So I'm just saying that this is different. The gentlelady from Georgia is correct. I've been through reconciliation before. I know how this process works, and it is about numbers. And I agree with that point. But this is different. This reconciliation is going after things that have been long respected and honored in this country. And we are changing our ideals and our commitments to people like our own veterans. They want to pull benefits from federal employees. And again, the numbers behind this all, the general purpose here, as you know, Mr. Chairman, is to make a tax cut possible. So we're going to increase the debt. We are. That's the plan here. We're going to increase the debt by, I think, at least $4 trillion, based on what we're looking at right now. And to justify that, we're cutting all this. We're cutting people who, veterans benefits are different. They're different. They're different and they're special because veterans benefits are for courageous service previously rendered. We owe this. We owe those benefits. Those wounded veterans lying in VA hospitals all across this country, your state and mine, we owe them for their service. They have delivered. Every one of them, by definition, every veteran who's eligible for this has honorably served this country in uniform, put their life on the line for the benefit of us all. We made a commitment to them. We said, if you come back with wounds, visible or invisible, we will take care of you. We made that promise. Multiple generations of Americans have made that promise. And this budget, these numbers, breach that promise. We break that promise in this bill. First time ever, at least in the 25 years I've been here. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your courtesy, and I yield back.
Any other members seek recognition?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what we're hearing from the Republicans on this committee is laughable in its hypocrisy. They want to hide. They don't want to support the amendment from Ms. Stansberry, which I support, and they want to hide behind the CBO and process. You didn't care what the CBO had to say when you passed the last set of tax cuts for billionaires, the ultra wealthy, and corporations, when the CBO said that it would raise the national debt by trillions. You didn't care. You don't care now. You want to hide behind the CBO because you don't want to pass an amendment that protects Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food, housing, and programs that our constituents support. Then you want to bring up process. If we want to pass the amendment, we can pass the amendment. Don't hide behind process. If you believe that we need to protect Social Security, then vote yes. But don't come here and tell us that we can't pass it, like we don't have the power to simply press the button that says yes on here. It's hypocrisy. This is Republicans on this committee trying to cover up for Donald Trump and themselves from the fact that they want to rob our constituents of earned benefits and things we have fought for, because they want to give a massive $7 trillion tax cut that will go to the richest people in this country and put more money in their pockets. And they want us and our constituents to pay for it. They're finding money by stripping for parts the essential services that middle and working class and the fastest growing class of Americans, the working poor, not just depend on, but have earned, and that we have put forward as part of our social construct, that we will take care of each other and we will see this country through the eyes of the most vulnerable. It is despicable. So if you're going to be about cutting these things to help your billionaire donors and corrupt corporations, then just say it. But do not hide behind process in the CBO when you haven't cared about it before. I will yield my time to the ranking member.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. Kassar, did you desire time? Ms. Crockett?
Yes, please, because Maxwell took us to church. Push the button. Push the button. That is the name of the sermon. Hallelujah. I appreciate that because honestly, you know, the one thing that I hear in Maxwell, I appreciate that you have been traveling the country and actually listening to people. I appreciate Melanie talking about getting out, listening to people. I've had an opportunity to get out and listen to actual people. And the one thing that I hear is that they ain't following no rules. That's the only thing I hear, is that this administration has not been following any rules and been breaking everything. And so it is weird that we would hide behind process when we are talking about doing good, but to do bad, to fire workers, yes, let's do that. To decide that we are going to try to jerry rig and do this situation around birthright citizenship, to decide that we are going to try to just write out the Civil Rights Act in the form of an executive order. That I can go on for days about all the things that really have not been a part of the rules, that have only brought about harm. In fact, I still don't understand how or why Elon Musk was allowed to do anything that he was allowed to do. And honestly, I would argue that he was not allowed to do any of the things that he did. And no one argued for any procedures or rules then. So I applaud you, Ms. Stansberry, again, and thank you, Reverend Maxwell, for the sermon.
And if you would yield back.
I will yield it back to
I
you,
want to
sir.
add on, because you just brought something up, Rosanna Crockett, that reminds me that our colleagues are also saying that we can't vote on this because it doesn't have a CBO score, and because the CBO has not told us the impacts of it. And as a representative in the United States Congress, if you need a CBO score to know the impact of Social Security in your district, if you need a CBO score to know the impact of Medicaid in your district, food in your district, housing in your district, Medicaid in your district, then you need to go back out and speak to the people in your district. I yield back.
Any other members seek recognition?
I yield to Representative Crockett.
I just want to be clear. If anybody actually wants to know the impacts, we have it specifically in Georgia 14 as it relates to what's going to happen to Medicaid in Georgia 14. 111,000 children under the age of 19 and 20,000 seniors over the age of 65 will be impacted. As it relates to those that are dealing with food assistance, it will impact 99,000 people in that district. Oh, sorry, I was trying to help.
Any other members seek recognition? Mr. Silberman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak in favor of the amendment, because all we're trying to do here is say that don't reorganize or cut a department or agency to where you can't deliver the very services that department is created to give to the American people. And so, you know, I've heard from folks that work in my district office about how they're getting calls about OPM becoming even slower processing casework. The Social Security Administration is requiring people to come in person now because of policy changes, yet they cut half the people that worked at the Social Security Administration and closed many offices. So people's appointments are getting canceled, right? And I have story after story after story about people who used to call our office and be able to get in touch with an agency or get their agency problem solved. And now they can't because some of these cuts and some of these firings now make it so that the very agencies that were developed to provide services to the American people cannot do so anymore. That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's another way of putting it. And all we're trying to say is don't do that. Stop the cuts if they don't make sense. If their very purpose is to undermine a program, then just say that. If you're trying to cut the Social Security Administration because you don't like Social Security and want to get rid of it, just say that, right? But don't cut half the workforce who's trying to administer that program. And, this stuff about cutting the debt and the deficit. I mean, this president is the one that increased the deficit by trillions and the debt by trillions. The last time he said that these tax cuts were actually going to pay down, we're going to start paying down the debt like it's water. That's what he said after the 2017 tax cut. What happened? The deficit and the debt both increased dramatically. We're at 36 trillion now. Then he said tariffs last time would pay down the debt, and that hasn't happened either. Next, he's going to say his golf trips paid down the debt. The reality is this is not about fiscal responsibility. This is about cutting services that help the American people. Also, we can give it to the largest and wealthiest corporations. I yield back. I yield to Ms. Stansberry.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. I also think, Mr. Chairman, just being conscious of language, in this room just a few moments ago, our friends across the aisle used the word garbage to refer to our fight to protect your Social Security. I am so sorry, but seniors, veterans, children whose parents have died, kids on school lunches are not garbage. The American people are asking us to fight for them, and the fight for the funding that keeps them alive, the fight to help the people of this country is not garbage. I think that, we're sitting here and the debate has taken this bizarre turn where it's being put forward that somehow we don't care about fiscal responsibility. I'm sorry, that's just baloney, okay? Like, we are all about making the government more efficient. We are all about addressing the needs of the American people. This amendment is about defending the existing programs that keep Americans alive, and neither them or those programs or the federal workers who provide those programs are garbage. These are the American people. These are who we work for. We don't work for Donald Trump. We don't work for the billionaires. And the entire argument that's being put forward here today, that cutting a few little pieces here and there and decimating the federal workforce and these programs is somehow going to save the deficit, is literally a bold-faced lie. The CBO has scored your reconciliation bill. The CBO says it is going to raise the debt by $5 trillion. So if you're going to sit here and say it's not going to raise the debt, you're just lying. That is factually untrue. So if you want to play the CBO score game, let's talk about what this bill actually does. It's going to raise the debt by $5 trillion. It's going to increase deficit spending by $37 trillion over the next 30 years. And it's going to give your billionaire donors and all those guys out there that you're trying to help, including these guys serving in the cabinet, the largest tax break in American history. And how are you going to do it? By balancing the books on federal workers and the elders and seniors and children of this country. And that's why we're fighting. And it's not garbage. And the fight is not garbage. And we are here to defend the people who we work for, not the billionaires. I yield back.
Does any other member seek recognition? Seeing none, the question is now on the Lynch Amendment number 2. Stansberry Amendment. The question is now on the Stansberry Amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Recorded vote requested.
Recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what purpose does Ms. Stansberry seek recognition again?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more amendment.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2 to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Ms. Stansbury of New Mexico.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentlewoman from New Mexico is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm grateful for the notes that were brought to this debate a few moments ago by my colleagues on this side of the aisle about following the rules, because there's been nothing about this administration over the last 100 days that has been about following the rules. In fact, we've never seen a more lawless administration basically trying to break the rules around the appropriations process, around the constitutional separation of powers, around federal hiring and firing laws, about data mining your data. And in fact, there are now over 170 federal court cases and over 90 restraining orders and injunctions against this administration for their lawless behavior. So what this amendment does is make sure that the American taxpayers are not left on the hook, and that those who are breaking these laws cannot continue to do so or to financially benefit from the federal government. So I'm going to read it. Any individual serving in an advisory or decision-making role to the president or the president's administration, including any special government employee, that would be someone like Mr. Musk or any of these DOGE employees, as that term is defined in Section 202 of Title 18 of the Code, who has significant financial conflicts of interest or who has been found by a federal court to have violated any federal law while serving in that role, shall be barred from serving, advising, or interacting with the executive branch, and from entering into a contract with any federal agency, and shall be held liable for any damages to the federal government and the American people. Now, I know that this is all about the budget. So you want to save the American people money? Now, let's take a quick diversion to clarify one thing. First of all, the whole premise of this DOGE exercise was that it was going to save the American people money. But actually, the report card is out this week, and actually the Trump administration has spent tens of billions of dollars more money in the last 100 days than the last administration did. They didn't save you money, guys. They actually spent more money. And part of the reason is because Donald Trump is using federal taxpayer dollars to fly down to his golf resort every weekend while he's taking away your benefits, and Elon Musk is destroying the fundamental programs that provide VA benefits and Social Security and actually help with programs that you all depend on. And they're not saving money. This whole idea that it's waste, fraud, and abuse, it's a total lie. Because while they're doing this, they're also giving themselves additional contracts. We know that Elon Musk has already put himself in a position before he leaves in the next couple of weeks to pick up contracts at FAA. He's going to pick up contracts at DOD. I heard yesterday from some of my constituents that he's actually talking about getting billions of dollars through this Golden Dome project that they want to put in this reconciliation package. I mean, talk about grift. We're talking tens of billions of dollars to build a missile defense system that Donald Trump just bought up one day, and he wants to give a private contract to Elon Musk to build it. So this amendment would protect the American taxpayers from people like these special government employees who've been exploiting their role within the federal government, self-dealing, stealing from the American people, impacting our services, and frankly, putting you on the hook for their defense in the courts. So that's what this amendment is all about. And with that, I yield back.
That's not going to
Does
pass.
any other member seek recognition?
Still staying
Ms. Crockett.
political, but I'm also being realistic
Yes,
here.
I just wanted to thank the gentlelady for her amendment. And I was curious because you already kind of preempted the arguments that would come from the other side as it relates to saving money. We do know that Elon had a
So I'll pause here and I'm going to mute them for a second because they're just kind of repeating the same thing. I know there were some comments about on my channel calling federal employees leeches or, they're garbage or entitled people. I don't know if some of the commenters realize that Social Security employees are also federal employees. So this is a really big deal, and they're already proposing to cut probably about 40% of the Social Security Administration to. I'm sorry, they're proposing to cut 40% of the workforce in the Social Security Administration, and that's not in the bill yet. There's no markup for that yet. And these pension benefits going away could discourage potentially like Social Security Administration employees to continue working there. They might go somewhere else, and the line could be longer. Trying to get a hold of someone is going to be a nightmare. It already is, right, with Social Security. So if you don't think this is going to affect you directly, it's still going to affect you indirectly in some way. So I think that's something that to keep in mind that. There are so many agencies, right? There are a lot of agencies, a lot of departments, but I think in many ways there are a lot of things that are going to be tied to you, And again, this has nothing to do with state or local employees, but I know that was one of the comments too. What does that have to do with state or local employees? A lot of the state contracts get that money from the federal government as well. Construction, right? Building bridges. They get that additional funding from the federal government in order to make that happen. So I think it would be unfair. My channel is open to all opinions, but I want to say my thoughts on it. It's like calling veterans freeloaders, right? Now I'm a veteran. If someone comes up to me and said, I'm like, oh, how'd you come to that conclusion, right? I kind of want to know about that. So um, I get it. You guys want to have your opinions, but I get it.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
And Mr.
Amendment's
Chair,
not
I'd ask
passed.
for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is ordered. As previously announced, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what purposes does Mr. Frost seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the amendment? Now will the clerk designate the amendment?
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the fiscal year 2025 Budget Reconciliation Committee print, providing for reconciliation pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 14 is offered by Mr. Frost of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rule of law is fundamental in a functioning country, and the only thing that's going to guarantee people's safety and security. Without the rule of law, there's chaos, corruption, anarchy. And if the president and the government he leads do not follow all laws and ignore the ones that they find inconvenient, then no laws really matter for the general public. So no bills that we file, debate, or vote on matter as long as the president of the United States is defying Supreme Court decisions and defying the law. The Trump administration is already undermining the rule of law, spewing out blatantly illegal executive orders, ignoring Americans' constitutional rights, and ignoring and even mocking many of the federal judges and judicial decisions that point out and prohibit Trump's illegal actions. Our democracy and our rights are still hanging on by a thread because Trump has lost over and over again in court. His illegal acts prohibited by federal judges appointed by both Democrats and Republicans. And now the administration is even ignoring a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court decision. This is a Supreme Court decision that includes 6 Republicans, 3 of them appointed by Trump himself. Our federal judges have been stunned by this, but slow to figure out on how to react. Congress must act on this. So far, congressional Republicans have allowed Trump to get away with everything, rolling over and completely surrendering all their power to the Trump administration. Congress has to exercise its authority and defend the rule of law. My amendment will help us do that. If the White House or any executive agency of this administration or any administration violates an order by the Supreme Court, my amendment will nullify this entire legislation. This amendment is important because the 9-0 Supreme Court decision that the Trump administration is currently ignoring is in defense of our most fundamental right, the right to due process. Twice in our Constitution, in both the 5th and 14th Amendments, it states that the government cannot deprive us of our life, liberty, or property without due process. It doesn't apply to certain people in this country. It applies to every human in this country. Because of that constitutional, fundamental due process right, the Supreme Court's 9-0 ruling was an order to the Trump administration to facilitate the return of the United States Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Kilmar is the man who Trump administration sent to a hellish prison in El Salvador by mistake. The administration even said by mistake, an administrative error, they keep calling it. The administration also had to admit that Kilmar had no criminal history, but they still casually called him a terrorist, pretending that he has gang tattoos and hope that people will believe them. But here's the thing. That is horrible. But the worst part of this whole thing right now is the reasoning that they're using to not facilitate his return, which the Supreme Court has ordered the administration to do. And they're saying that it is completely out of their hands. With that reasoning, what's to prevent this administration from deporting anyone?
Okay, so I get it. You know, they got to say what they got to say. I'm going to stick to the topic of the pensions and stuff. So just to answer some of the questions on there, Steve, I have clients in the air traffic control. They're on the same boat. And there are some amendments about, taking away the Social Security supplement. I get it. And, a lot of people are kind of waiting for this, how this bill goes to make that decision. The Social Security, it was just an example. And I get that everybody has a role to play. And what you all do has some kind of impact on our lives. And a lot of people just don't understand that. They don't see it every day. Like you have electricity, you have water running and all that stuff. And there's a lot to do with the federal government and their employees. And it's just an example. Social Security, there's going to be a big impact on that. HEC, yep, we're going to have some impact on that because I know you guys are severely understaffed, and it's crazy. But anyway, just this amendment, another one. Obviously, it's not going to get passed, and there's just and I agree with someone just said this feels like a waste of time. Not entirely. At the beginning, some Republicans did voice their opposition to the bill. There is a what do you call it? Amendment already from Mr. Comer, who's speaking right now, just talking about this current amendment. But there's already an amendment that he created to the bill from last Friday. So I'm going to go over that. If they propose another amendment that has nothing to do with the federal employee pension, I'm going to pause on this hearing and just move on to what they have proposed in the bill. Okay.
You can go to Kassar first. Or okay, I can go. I'll yield my time to Mr. Frost.
No, I think something's very interesting because in the chairman's explanation of why he doesn't support the bill, he says there's a possibility, or the amendment, he said there's a possibility that the amendment would nullify a bipartisan piece of the legislation in front of us. But all my amendment does is say that if the president of the United States defies a Supreme Court decision, then it nullifies the bill, which means the chairman is conceding right here in this committee that the president of the United States could, and I would say is right now, defying a Supreme Court decision, which is dangerous in this country. You should not have to worry about anything being nullified if you truly believe that the administration is following the law. But not even the chairman believes that the administration is following the law. I'll yield back to Representative Crockett.
Yes. Do you mind answering a few questions for me?
Yes.
Out of curiosity, you talk about them violating this law. And I'm curious if most Americans understand what you and I understand, is that in violating someone's civil rights, constitutional rights, we are actually costing this country a lot of money. Because whenever we get a break go back, baby, they gonna get sued.
Okay, so just real quick, I'm going to try not to express my frustration with some of these members. They haven't even got to the Social Security supplement, but I'm just going to go over that real quick because I don't want to stay here for 5-6 hours and just listen to the same amendments, similar amendments that haven't even happened yet, and they know that they're not going to get passed, and they haven't even got to the Social Security supplement. So what I will do is I'm going to share this instead, and I am going to mute this, and actually I'm not going to mute it, I'm just going to turn it down. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, just to answer someone's question about the ATC. Let me switch this real quick. So this right now, what they have proposed, the biggest deficit that we're going to have, according to all of these amendments, it's going to be the Ways and Means Committee with a deficit of $4.5 trillion. Okay, T with a trillion with a T, and of all they're trying to offset what they propose or what they plan to propose with the tax cuts and all that. And they are looking to cut spending like energy and commerce. And that's what they've been talking about, which is the energy and commerce, because the problem is most of it is Medicaid in that committee. And they're looking to cut pretty close to $900 billion, right? So this right here is going to be held on May 7th. And going into the just what's in the package here. If I go into the not political, let me see the original amendment here. Let me see, is it this one here? Okay, let's make sure. I'll go ahead and zoom in on the text here. So I'm just going to go over what they have proposed so far, and that's what's in the bill. So the first annuity supplement, right? That is the section 90002. It is to insert to remove the Social Security supplement for people who retired before the age of 62, right? The exception is if you are entitled to an annuity supplement under Section 8421 of Title V. So that would include the ATC, right? The firefighters, LEOs, that would be the law enforcement officers who have to retire at the age of 56. Then they are still entitled to the first annuity supplement. That's on this in the draft so far. And they have announced that. And Representative Comer did even say that even for special provision employees will be exempted from this elimination of first annuity supplement. So just make sure that you keep up with the bill. And this is still going to be ongoing for a while, and we don't know where this is going to go. But because of the words, the language, and how this committee hearing has been going, it is most likely going to keep that as is. And they tried to strike the high five average pay, which is section 90003 here. Go ahead and zoom in on this. And they can strike, but they're going to keep it in place. And this is the amendment change that was updated as of yesterday morning. Everything's the same from Monday's video. If you haven't watched that, just take a look at that Monday's video. But they added this right here, which is January 1st, 2027. So with respect to an employee or member who retires on or after January 1st, 2027, other than an individual entitled to an annuity under subsection C or E of section 8336, the largest annual rate resulting from averaging an employee's or members' rates of basic pay in effect over any 5 consecutive years of credible service, or in the case of an annuity under subsection D or E1 of section 8341 of this title, based on service of less than 5 years over the total service, with each rate weighted by the time it was in effect. Hold on one second, let me make sure. Sorry, the committee has someone else popping up, but that's still irrelevant. Okay, so they added that. Anyway, the first document that I talked about on Monday's video did not have this. It was upon enactment. So enactment means that as soon as Congress votes on it, which is the House votes on it, the Senate votes on it, and then sends it to the White House for President Trump's signature. Once he signs it, that's the date. That's the enactment, right? So I hope that makes sense. Now, this language that added with January 1st, 2027, it means that it won't happen until the members who retire after January 1st, 2027. That is the latest update as of yesterday morning on that high 5 average, because I think there was a lot of opposition on the Republican side. And if you watch from the beginning of this live stream, was that they were opposing. There were some members of on the Republican side did not like having this high five average salary being implemented right away. So that was one of the big changes. Uh, the first contribution rate is still in there, and that is a 4.4% increase, and which is also going to be an increase for uh, the what do you call that? Special provision employees as well. So that's being implemented upon right here. It says date of the enactment of this act. Okay, so those are the key words that you want to look at if you want to read the bill. So special provision, how that's going to be, and that's going to be going from 4.4 to 4.9%. And you just want to make sure that you read this correctly on when that date is going to be. Again, how do I find this? Go to the CFPB, I'm sorry, CRSB, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Search, right? Type that in, type in for reconciliation tracker, and it's on the top, right? And it's going to show up. And what you want to find, if you care more about this, this is where you want to go. Oh, you know what? I didn't share this tab real quick. So right here under oversight and government reform, right there. And you just click on this markup page. It's on the link on the right. Okay, that's how you can find it. And when you click on this, you're gonna see the full committee, like the repository, like all the list of documents that are published, the amendments and all that. So when you come down here, what I just clicked on, it's right here. That is as of added on April 29th at 9:58 a.m. yesterday morning. So this is amendment by Representative Comer that was added on there, and they added that date. So anyway, that's how you want to find it. I know a lot of comments, they're going to say, where do I find this? Where do I find that? You know, a little bit of Google search, you know, it'll happen. One thing I did find about Congress is that they kind of made it on purpose to make it complicated for regular folks to find it. I'm not going to be like, you know, well, you should know how to Google search this. I've Google searched these documents, and it's really, really hard to find. So I don't know if they're doing this on purpose or, you know, they just maybe I just need to get used to it a little more. But that's how you can find it. Anyway, back to this for elimination for the first annuity. Let's see. So the first annuity is on there, January 1st, 2027, as I talked about. And then the other one was the election for the at-will employment. So they tried to, you know, there were arguments in that committee back and forth about this and try to amend this, did not get passed. So that one is going to stay on for right now. And election for at-will employment, the lower first contribution. The one thing I have not found is how much lower it's going to be for at-will employees. So that's something that I would like to see more into the future. But again, I already did the video on that, and I don't want to waste your time. But it is going to be filing fees. See, FEHB protection is still going to be on there. Let me see. All right, let me. All right, let's see what they have to say.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, the Republicans on this committee just voted no on canceling Elon Musk contracts if he violates the law and stays past 130 days. The Republicans on this committee just voted no on Mr. Frost's amendment that would require the President of the United States to follow U.S. Supreme Court orders. At some point, we've got to have some shame on this committee. So my amendment, I would hope my Republican colleagues would vote for it, is that if a court or the federal government finds that Mr. Musk abused his power to enrich himself here over the last few months, then we would cancel his contracts. If a court finds that the richest man on earth went in, used the federal books, scraped people's data, steered contracts to himself, then we should maybe stop sending him $8 million a day and save the American taxpayer $3 billion. That's the way that not just Democrats, but conservatives, progressives, independents all across the country want to see us save some money by saying these corporate grifters that use the government to enrich themselves, they should get cut off. And look, there's a House Republican majority today, but there could be a Democratic majority tomorrow, or at least in under 2 years. And when we are sitting on this committee, and if we get a chance to have the subpoena power and look into this and find out that Elon Musk has used his power to enrich himself, the consequences could actually be much greater than just having his contracts cut off. So I ask my Republican colleagues, I know you voted no on Mr. Frost's amendments to say the president should follow the U.S. Supreme Court. I know you just voted no on my amendment that said if Mr. Musk stays over the 130 days, he should have his contracts canceled. At a minimum, I would ask that you vote for this amendment that says if Musk breaks the laws, if he says that if we find out from a court or from the federal government that he steered these contracts to himself, then we shouldn't keep on rewarding him with billions in taxpayer dollars. That's the way we should be saving the American taxpayer money, not by kicking kids off of Medicaid or pulling school meals or firing veterans. I yield back, Mr. Chairman, and I would hope that at least one Republican member of Congress would vote to say we will hold Mr. Musk accountable if he stays past the 130-day limit. We'll hold Mr. Musk accountable if a court finds that he's been funneling money to himself. The news is out that he's seeking this multi-billion-dollar contract for Trump's Golden Dome. The word is out that he's out there messing with the FAA, trying to get his Starlink contracts at the FAA. The word is out that he tried to get a $400 million contract just recently for Tesla at the State Department, and then he got caught doing it. So, look, you may not think it's going to come out today, but it will come out eventually, and it would have been better if you voted yes to say we're going to cut off Musk's contracts if he breaks the law, if he breaks the 130-day rule, if he breaks conflicts of interest, if he keeps on using his position to enrich himself. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so
Any other members
that one
of
is
recognition?
also pretty pointless to
Crockett.
what they should be
Yeah,
trying to
I would
accomplish
say
here.
that,
I'm going to
Mr.
mute that
Kassar-
real quick. So let me turn that down for a second. The one thing that I am also paying attention to is how much of this savings is going to go to so right now they have proposed a 51. Sorry, let me go back to that real quick. Okay, so they're supposedly saving $51.6 billion over the next 10 years. Let me see. And then the markup schedule. Yeah, I had to pause the hearing for a second because they're not even on topic. They're talking about something else now. So I don't know. It's like it has even nothing about the bill. They haven't even talked about the Social Security supplement. There's no argument about that. It's been like, I get it, about the Supreme Court on Trump and something else, and it has completely irrelevant. And knowing that their amendments are going to get voted down, they have a Republican majority in this committee. So, but anyway, this is whatever. Okay. This right here, I am going to put it in the chat. I don't know if I can add the link to the chat. Maybe I can, because YouTube is really careful about that. Let me see if I can post it. Okay, 1 second here. Let me know if that worked. All the links, it looks like it got posted. Let me know if you see it. You see it? Okay, cool. Because YouTube is really, really weird about that, and understandable. There are a lot of scammers in the comment section, so you want to be careful what you click on. And I don't think YouTube allows anyone, all of you guys, to post any links, but just click on that. And this right here is where you get your updates. Okay, so right now, what they propose so far is they're going to say 51.6 billion. What they propose to cut is $50 billion over the next 10 years. And there's the markup schedule, right? And in the bill text summary, that where you can go. And when you click on the next one, let me click on this. right here, this one. I'm going to zoom in real quick. Right here under the text, I'm going to refresh and see if there's anything new. Nothing is new. Check on this every day. They should upload it. This is the newest one that you can find, because the next one you're going to find is this one. That's the link that I showed you earlier about what they're proposing, all the changes. Unfortunately, they don't give you a changes summary at the beginning of the page. So you're going to have to kind of comb through it and compare it with the original document. You know, so just kind of want to see the changes here and there. They did emphasize on the special provision employees, ATC, law enforcement officers, as well as the firefighters, how they're not going to lose out on the federal employee pension annuity. Sorry, federal employee annuity pension. That's a part of it. So take a look. Take a look at this. Okay. Let me. Oh, there's someone new. Hold on one second. Let me make sure that they're not saying anything irrelevant. Talking about tariffs. You know, keep the opinions to myself. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna keep the opinions to myself. Anyway, that's how you can find it. All right. I know there was another comment that says, "Well, why don't you just, you know, sort of a negative comment and say, you know, all these cuts are necessary because you know you need to try to compete with the private sector." I think, you know, if you look at how the pay is structured compared to the federal government pay and the private sector pay, the federal employees are grossly underpaid compared to the private sector, and that's why they have these benefits to, you know, attract new employees, new recruits, right? The one thing that is obviously concerning everyone is, you know, they're going to pull this rug under all the people who have been like working for the last 20 and 30 years, and now it's like, all right, you know, I know we said we're going to give you first annuity supplement, but here's the thing, you know, that's kind of basically what's happening, right? And as well as the you know, the private sector, the job market is not that great, and I think that's something that people kind of have to realize too, is that the job market is not great. And I want to show you this. The GDP came out in Q1, and this is what everybody else is looking at right now. The market is not doing so great because we're experiencing the first contraction since 2022 with the negative 0.3%. So the GDP comes out with three estimates. This was the first estimate from January 1st until March 31st of 2025. And the GDP has contracted down to 0.3%. And the Q4 2024 was up 2.4%. So that's a significant drop, right? That's 2.7% drop in the GDP. So the market is nervous right now because what if we get, if you look at the chart here, what if we get another contraction in Q2 2025? Then technically we're in a recession, right? Inflation went up again. So inflation going up, if unemployment rises, which we'll get the unemployment report on Friday, then we're going to see a potential stagflation. And that's what they've been talking about, is that there's a stagnant economy where it doesn't grow. And the private sector jobs have been declining. So even if the federal employees do leave or any government employees leave, the reports are saying that the job market is shrinking, right? So it's going to be a tougher job market than it was in 2020 and 2021 when everybody was allowed to work at home. I mentioned that PC inflation came in, grew by 3.5%. So the core PCE came in 3.5% in the first quarter, above the 3.2% estimate. So the inflation has not eased up. And they have a weaker than expected reading of private payroll. So the ADP, which is the private payroll for the month of March, it only grew by 62,000 as opposed to 115,000 that was expected. That's about half. That's crazy, right? So that's something to keep in mind, is that, all right, it's easy to let people say, you know, let's go ahead and let people go and we'll figure it out. The private sector will be more competitive. But when the private sector job market is weakening, you know, if you let all the federal employees go all at once, the unemployment data is going to skyrocket. And what's that going to do to the stock market, right? The stock market is going to tank again. It's going to crash again, like it did on April 8th and April 9th. And what's going to happen to the companies in the private sector? They're going to start laying more people off, and that's already been happening. So that's something to remember. They're still talking about the same thing. Okay, so here's what I'll do. I'm going to post all the links that you guys can look at it yourself, because I don't want to, I've been live streaming for almost 3 hours. This is probably the longest live stream I've ever done, even more so the federal, longer than the federal FOMC meeting. So next time I do the live stream, I am going to stream the Federal Reserve when they make that interest rate decision next Wednesday. That's going to be at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's when we're going to find out if the Fed, Jerome Powell, is going to raise interest rates. He's not going to raise interest rates. If he's going to cut interest rates, or if he's going to keep the rates steady. That's going to be on Wednesday. And it looks like the tax cuts, so the no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime and tips and all that, that's going to come out, it looks like on May 8th is what I'm looking at on the calendar. So just keep that in mind. Just keep checking our website. Come to my live stream. I really appreciate all of you guys being here. I know this was more about the federal employee pension plan, but I have a lot of resources. Retirement calculator, how that's going to work. I'm going to turn this off because they're still talking. And I have a whole playlist of the TSP, and I have a private community for the TSP investors. Check it out. Go to firesidechat.com/community. And, people have gone in there and just keeping an eye on all the bills that's going on. There's a new rule change coming up for the TSP. That's going to be the in-plan Roth conversion, which I have a video coming up on Friday. Probably next week that I'm going to talk about. So those are the things that you can stay in touch on. Just check it out. And we do provide a one-on-one consultation. If you want to go, that's going to be firesidechat.com/consultation. So check it out when you're okay, when you get a chance, but just take a look at that. I know a lot of you guys in the chat or in the comment section, thank you so much for participating, and, just keep it up until, if you're opposed to it, you have the right to write to your congressman and a senator. That's your right, right? And if you, I haven't seen a single comment where it says, people are completely in agreement to the bill. It's just a lot going on in 2025. I want to make sure that you guys stay informed, but, just keep an eye on this, please. And just keep an eye on what's going on with the committee for this, and keep an eye on what's going on with the Ways and Means Committee as well. I'm going to type that up, and because a lot of people don't know that, Ways and Means Committee. And that is going to be for the tax cuts, all the tax cuts that are coming up, and the tax increases as well. So I did a video on that about a couple months ago. Check that out. I'm going to make a new video about that as well as soon as they publish the draft from the Ways and Means Committee. Okay. So anyway, I again appreciate you guys being here, and I will come back next time. All right. Have a good one.